joins us today for this meeting. Can I just first of all pass over to Scott just to give some housekeeping?
Thank you, Chair. And whilst some members just take their seats, again, just a reminder that in line with legal requirements, this meeting has been held face to face. But again, members of the public and other elected members.
Forgive me, Chair, just point of order. We can't hear a word over this side of the room.
Again, just a reminder for everyone that this meeting is being held face to face for elected members. But again, members of the council and the public can join online and participate at the meeting. Just a reminder for any members of the public that are attending this for the first time, it is only the councillors present in this room that are taking the decisions at the meeting. Any officers present are here to provide advice. Just a reminder for everybody that the agenda and papers for this meeting were published on the council's website on Monday, the 15th of April. The meeting, as you can see, is already being live broadcast, and we will be making an audio recording of the meeting that we published on the council's website. In terms of fire safety, can I just remind everyone that we are not expecting any planned fire drills today, and should the fire alarms go off, if I can ask everybody to leave by the fire exit, principally to my left, which is which is just to the side of this room, where officers will escort everyone round to the front of the building at the main car park as an assembly point. Just a reminder for everybody as well, if anybody does wish to speak, again, if you can raise your hand, and both the Vice Chair and myself will be noting names when it comes to then the Chair inviting you to speak. And that's just a reminder that anyone addressing the council does so at the invitation of the Chair of the council. Please do not interrupt the debate during the debate sessions. And finally, just a reminder for all speakers, just for the benefit particularly of any members of the public who are watching this online, when you're invited, again, if you could just say your name and your role before speaking.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we can move into the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Back to you, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. The apologies that I received in advance from group leaders include Councillors Denton, Hobbs, Kay, Keach, Kravis, Robbins, Clark, Nicholson, Davies, Wren, Patrick, Dyke, Boyden. I also note that I believe Councillor Perry is joining later during the meeting, and many members are probably aware that several members are joining the meeting remotely.
Thank you very much. Yes, David first.
Thank you, Chair. We also have apologies from Jill Slocum, who's not well, and Christine Lawrence, who continues to recover.
Thank you.
Yep. Chair, it's Councillor Redmond. I've just had notification from Councillor Govia to say that he'll be a little bit late, so he wishes to log his apologies at the beginning of the meeting, but he should be here, hopefully.
Thank you very much. Were there any further? No? Okay. If we move on to item 2, sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dimmery.
It would seem that Councillor Collins has been delayed, but he's intending to come.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is to confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the full council meeting on the 20th of February 2024. Is it agreed that I sign them as a true record? Okay. Yes, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. May I just ask that Citizens Advice Bureau be changed to Citizens Advice now? Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Just a courtesy point, really. When we have aldermen present, it would be quite nice to actually have their names listed as opposed to the aldermen. I think it's out the courtesies we're all named. It'd be nice if they were.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good point, and we'll add our 2 aldermen's names to this meeting. Thank you. Okay, if we now move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Jill.
So I've not received any additional declarations of interest from any members, Chair, and just
for the meeting, the interest of members in terms of membership of town, city and parish councils is on our website.
Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no declarations off of the floor, I'll move on to item 4, which is public question time. If I can, I will be inviting members of the public to speak. They have up to 3 minutes to cover their points. I will remind them that members have received a full copy of their submission. So if they feel it not the need to read everything out and just précis, it would be appreciated. Our first speaker who is on Teams this afternoon is David Redgewell. Mr. Redgewell.
Thank you, Chair. So my question today is about Yeovil bus station and its infrastructure. We held a meeting. Unfortunately, the leader of the council was on holiday and sent his apologies, with stakeholders from Somerset and Dorset, bus user groups from Dorset and Somerset, from the Southwest region, stakeholder groups, and also First Group PLC, and rail partnerships. Yeovil bus station is very complicated. It's owned by a development company in Northern Ireland who put it up for sale as part of the Quadrum shopping centre. So we understand there's a major redevelopment plan. We understand Somerset has a lease which it took over from South Somerset. I think First is prepared to do some work to keep the waiting room open. Others may be prepared to do some work to try and keep the bus station functioning and its passenger facilities. Obviously, this side of the Dorset election, I wouldn't ask for a meeting, but I think on behalf of Peter Travis and the Somerset Bus Partnership, the West Dorset Public Transport Users Group, and First and the operators on that call, I wonder if Bill and Richard would meet with a number of us to see if there's a way forward that may involve very little council money, but we need to have the conversation with partners. And as a council now, under its new sort of way of working, is no longer going to be able to do everything itself, but it's going to be more of a partnership council, in the way perhaps Devon and Cornwall also are, and Bristol. We would welcome that approach. So really all I'm asking for today is a meeting. On the second issue, it's about the submission and making sure we cover off the bus stations and interchanges in the county for our submission on the 12th of June to Mark Harper, Secretary of State for Transport. I still believe you'll be in post on that date, and making sure we cover off the management of our bus stations interchanges. I know we don't have a clear structure at the moment, and that's work in progress, and I welcome that, but that we do have an investment programme ongoing with the Department for Transport for our interchanges across the county. And the third point really is passenger information. I was a bit dismayed, and I will bring this up as a member of your bus advisory board, that First produced a bus timetable for Somerset recently, but managed to leave a number, put some services in, like Weston-super-Mare to Wells, and services between, and services from Burnham Chair to towards Weston, and some of the routes between Taunton and Bristol and Bridgewater, but failed to put all the routes between Wells and Bath in it. So perhaps, and Frome and Bath, so perhaps we could talk to First corporately about the timetable and how we also put local bus information in there as well, especially in an area of tourism and a need to local residents, and also information on bus stops. Thank you very much, Chairman, for your endeavours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard Wilkins to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for your question. And as you know, I'm always willing to meet yourself or Peter Travis as part of the Somerset Bus Partnership. And indeed, we do have a board meeting. We do have a board meeting coming up in the next couple of days. In response to your questions, as you're aware, we have the need to make some very difficult decisions in recent months to set a balanced budget. Those decisions include the closure of public toilets because of cleaning and maintenance costs. Some town, city and parish councils are stepping in to keep some of these facilities open. Once devolved like this, Somerset Council passes control to the other organisation, and they would be managed as part of the organisation sees fit. So there isn't a role for us. We have had discussions with Yeovil Town Council, but they're not currently in a position to take on the responsibility for the facilities at the town bus and coach station. It is vital that Somerset Council moves forward to a long-term financially sustainable position to deliver the vital services. Bringing together 5 complex organisations takes time, and we're still in the process of aligning some of these areas because we don't have the resources to do everything at once. I have asked officers to take a detailed look at the bus and coach infrastructure over the next year so that we're in a better position to move forward from. And second question, to clarify the position, the submission of the updated bus service improvement plan, the BSIP, in June 2024 does not represent a funding bid to government on this occasion, but will again set out our future ambitions subject to funding. The submission of the BSIP in June is to release the 2024-2025 funding tranche already allocated by government as part of the original BSIP. We are following the government's guidance on the submission, and we have consulted with the operators, bus users and stakeholder groups, and will be consulting the Bus Advisory Board in the next week prior to our submission by the deadline. And third question, our position on the provision of timetable displays at bus stops is that it is the operator's responsibility where the service is commercial or part funded by Somerset Council. Where the service is fully funded, we will look to ensure that the displays are updated unless we have had insurance from the operators that they're going to update the timetable displays. With the recent changes on the 7th and 15th of April, we had assurances from both First Group companies that all timetable displays would be updated in time for the changes introduced. However, we've been advised from First West of England that due to a delay in supply of their displays from their printers, they have not been able to update the displays along the routes in Somerset which have changed. We have been advised that these timetables will be delivered to First West of England by the end week commencing the 15th of April. And we have offered resources to help get these displays posted as soon as possible. We do not have the resources to undertake widespread updates of timetable cases on our own when large changes occurs, and we rely on operators to fulfil this task in a timely manner, but we are able to assist when requested. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rosa Kell, who I believe is in the room. Could you approach the lectern, please?
Apologies, Chair,
Right.
I'm actually online.
Yeah, I apologise. I'm just reading what was written here. My apologies.
That's okay, Chair. I was supposed to be there, but I couldn't get there. Apologies. Thank you. I think Mr. Wilkins, Councillor Wilkins, has actually answered my questions, but I'll ask them anyway. We as passengers from the Wells district are concerned at the closure of the toilets at Yeovil, and of course any announcement about a future new bus station in Yeovil. We travel to Yeovil. It is a major town and it's very important to us. And as disabled and diabetic and passengers, we require a loo at getting off at Yeovil bus station. It's very, very important that those toilets remain disposable to us. That basically was my first two questions. The third question, it really relates to a concern that we passengers have. Somerset, like all local authorities, receives cash from coach operators who park on their sites. We're wondering where those funds are going and are they being diverted elsewhere, because they don't appear to be that income doesn't appear to be spent on the infrastructure of our bus network. And perhaps we could have an answer on that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Rosa. I will answer the first question, and it's fairly similar to the previous answer. As you're aware, we need to make some very difficult, heartbreaking decisions in recent months to set a balanced budget. Those decisions include the closure of public toilets because of the cleaning and maintenance costs. We appreciate this is a difficult decision and reduces facilities available for bus users, and we continue to seek opportunities to reduce the impact of these changes. We are also aware that Glover's Walk, shopping precinct, the bus station and part of Lower Middle Street has been put on the market. We appreciate there are concerns about the potential impact of the sale of the bus infrastructure, and once a sale has been completed, we will be able to engage with new owners to understand their intentions and ascertain if there'll be any impact on the bus station's operations. We will then be able to determine what, if any, action is necessary to maintain the appropriate facilities for bus users. We appreciate the concerns and will be working collaboratively across various transport planning communities and property services to deal with these matters, and will engage with stakeholders on any plans and proposals at the appropriate time. Your second question, or third question in reality, that the council does not currently derive income from bus operators in relation to the use of bus hubs or bus stations. We understand that minimal access fees have been charged on specific facilities in the past where these have been in local authority ownership, and will be reviewing the relative benefits and disbenefits of access fees on public transport operations as part of our ongoing work on the medium-term financial plan and the enhanced bus partnership. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank you. Our next question was put in by Peter Travis, but I believe Linda is online to put that question.
Thank you. Sorry,
About 3
Richard.
minutes.
My name's Linda Snelling. I'm Yeovil Bus User Group and also part of Somerset Bus Partnership. And I'm sorry, Richard, it's another one about the bus station. I'll try and be as quick as possible. The National Bus Strategy for England stated bus stations should be protected from closure, redevelopment and be improved. Essential features of any bus station are toilets for passengers and bus drivers and the waiting room. Improving bus infrastructure is a key aim for Bus Better, and Somerset recognised this in successfully bidding, getting a bid with the BSIP money with the plans of Taunton Bus Hub. Yeovil Bus Station is another key regional transport hub, identified by 2 transport boards, Peninsula Transport and Western Gateway, and essential for both Somerset and Dorset bus and coach services. Yet Somerset Council is to close the toilets and waiting room at the bus station on the 31st of May. Without these facilities, drivers, passengers and those with conditions will significantly be affected by their closure, and it will impact passenger numbers, especially on our under threat services of 54 and 58. Yeovil Bus Station is part of Glover's Walk development, is one of the biggest regional development sites in Somerset, currently up for sale and under offer. It is vital that Yeovil Bus and Coach Station is preserved and considered a key part of any future development that replaces Glover's Walk. What urgent steps is the Somerset Council taking to ensure the functioning toilets and waiting room at the bus station after June 24? But what discussions are happening with Northern Ireland property owners of Glover's Walk to secure the future of Yeovil Bus Station and Coach Station?
Richard.
Thank you, Linda. I think the best bet is if I refer the answer that I gave Mrs. Cow. I think that pretty much answered everything. But obviously, we continue to work with the bus partnership to find the best solutions for the people of Somerset and the bus users. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You will be getting a full written response as well. So, okay.
Appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, the next speaker is Nigel Bean. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just summarise very briefly because I'm quoting some of the stuff from the papers today. In particular, that the council continues with the aim of avoiding a Section 114 notice by taking all of the necessary actions and continuing to operate as if it had one had been issued. And then further down, there's an issue about seeking reforms of the council tax, so you can set their own council tax levels without a need for a referendum. But does this proposed campaigning also include seeking reforms of the existing regressive council tax system? And then the next question, just following on from that really, does the council think that city, town, parish councils should have limits set externally prescribed to the precepts they require if or otherwise, for instance, they indirectly or directly take on services devolved, quote unquote, from the unitary authority, or should be able to set meaningful budgets that at least attempt to meet community needs? And then following on from that, whichever government is formed after the next election, how confident of legislative statutory change is the council, which would create a sustainably fully funded local authority which delivers for citizens, service users, residents, council taxpayers and electors? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Liz Lyshon to respond.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bean, for your questions. You're always bang on trend, on the money, whichever term you wish to use. So in answer to your first question about the regressive council tax system, short answer is yes, absolutely. However, we must be realistic in our expectations. Council tax was introduced for a short period of time, originally back in 1993. A completely new system of local taxation would be a massive undertaking. And so my hope would be that a new government will take some actions to improve council tax by revising the bands and introducing higher bands for bigger, higher value properties. If a new government wanted to take one action that would make an immediate difference and put monies where they are most needed, they could look for a modern council tax reduction scheme, such as we have in Somerset, and fund it nationally. That was the origin of the council tax reduction scheme with government funding, but that has disappeared into less specific grants and left local authorities with a part mandated system which impacts on each council's income. As an indicator, Somerset Council's cost of delivering the current council tax reduction scheme is approximately 36 million a year, with 16 million of that for the mandated part of the scheme for pension age and 20 million for working age households. On your question B, we don't believe that any council should have limits set upon them by government. This position has long been supported by the Local Government Association, and I checked their website yesterday that it is still there. In the MTFS papers, so the medium-term financial strategy papers today, as recommended by the executive earlier this month, there is reference to, quote, greater local freedoms, unquote. And for me, that would include the ability to set council tax to reflect the need for services in the community and to reflect the council tax base and historic rate. Greater local freedoms could also be taken to relate to planning application fees and licensing fees, because full cost recovery as a minimum would seem a perfectly reasonable request to any government. On the subject of what government could do to better support local authorities, the Treasury could find a way to improve the interest rate on funds placed with the equivalent of PWLB, so that council's Treasury management officers wouldn't have to look for safe places to deposit monies. If the government can arrange for PWLB to make loans to councils, which contribute to government funds, there is no reason why they couldn't find a way to improve the deal for local authorities with regard to deposits. You might remember the offset mortgage, which I believe is still in operation. And then on question 4C, in the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities response to the Select Committee report on financial distress in local authorities, the words most used were, quote, in the next Parliament, unquote. So that gives us a very clear indication that nothing will change before the general election. We believe that this should be a priority for the new government, but realise that in practice, things are very unlikely to be changed in time for the 25-26 budget. And of course, it becomes more difficult as the general election timing goes further into the autumn when councils are already working on the next year budget. So if nothing changes, more councils will move towards the position of Somerset Council, the more reserves will be used and the more assets and investments will be sold. That is clearly not a sustainable situation. The issue is how quickly might change come forward, because it's horribly overdue already. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Eva Brukowski, who is online. Are you there, Eva? You're muted. Can you unmute yourself? No, you're still muted. No. Yeah, we'll come back to you. I'll go on to the next one and we'll try again. Okay, so now we go to Matt Harris. Oh, we're back in. Are you there, Eva?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. If you'd
right,
like to
okay.
put your question. Thank you.
Yeah, if you could tell me after a minute loudly, and then another minute, and then when I've got 30 seconds, please, Chair.
Okay, I'm getting the hang of you.
Okay, right. Many of you councillors have held the ICB to account since Quicksilver Group and myself spoke last year and asked them to revisit the decision, but they still ploughed on doing exactly what they wanted to do. At the March the 1st meeting in Yeovil, public meeting, many of you asked excellent questions, but these were disregarded on March the 28th when they decided to move this service to Dorchester. Even before we could ask questions, the public could ask questions, they'd already decided. What I'm concerned with is reports in scrutiny committees and other things where everything in the garden is rosy, stakeholders are held to account. No, they're not. Now, when I spoke, Dean Ruddle, God rest his soul, told me that the council only have one vote. No influence, really.
1 minute.
Sorry, thank you. He didn't think much of the ICB. He spoke the truth. Thank you, Dean. Now, I hope your reply is going to be specific and not just fluffy generalities. How much influence do you have? Yes, no. Can you request that people voting on at the ICB meetings actually scrutinise more carefully? Now, Mr. Sharkey told me that he read the papers. I did thoroughly. And, you know, instead of building up Yeovil acute services, they're building up Dorchester that isn't even equipped to that extent at the expense of Yeovil. When, for example, Frome residents, you know, far from Dorchester and risk brain damage and slower recovery. And this is, you know, further debt regarding subsidised care. Thank you. So already 1,000 staff are being thrown onto the dole. There's very few voluntary redundancies. But, you know, that's further debt. Now, my second question, and I didn't make it specific, was regarding the Post Office Horizon scandal, where, you know, people shouldn't be, the ICB shouldn't be allowed to walk away from their decisions and the consequences on Somerset stroke patients, Somerset residents. So finally, you know,
30 seconds left.
Thank you. So I thank those of you that have scrutinised well, but I think the reports in scrutiny committees have to say we have little influence, if not none, and often that ICB just choose to actually do what they want to do, despite consultations, a public meeting of over 100 people, angry people, you know, all the evidence and etc. They just do what they want to do because they can. So I hope in the reports that actually that is said. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Liz Lyshon too.
Chair Sarah Waite.
Oh, Sarah Wainwright. Sorry, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Eva, for your question. As you probably know, I'm fairly new to this post, but I have written a reply, and I will send you a reply as well in writing. I have seen and read the passionate and powerful questions you put to us. You are, of course, reflecting the concerns of many in the Yeovil area about the decision which I understand has been made to move the HASU, the hyperacute stroke unit, to Musgrove, but to keep open the acute stroke unit at Yeovil. There will also be a HASU in Dorchester, although I'm not sure if it's operating yet. I witnessed some of the debate at a briefing before the decision was made and at scrutiny too. In my view, the matter has been very thoroughly aired, and the objections of concerned locals about lowering of standards of care, increased journey times for patients and relatives, and the real fear of poorer outcomes for those who live closest to Yeovil Hospital and who feel that either Musgrove or Dorchester will not give them the security they need and are entitled to expect from the NHS services. Whilst I share these very real concerns, which I know are very sincerely held by many, I think that there are two powerful points to be made here. The NHS is actually struggling successfully to recruit the doctors and staff they need for stroke units at both Musgrove and Yeovil, and also does not have the time or resources to continually delay a decision which they have been trying to make for many months, if not longer. I am quite convinced that, were the NHS in a more comfortable position in terms of resources and staff, a different decision might have been made. Sadly, this is not the case, and those who run and operate the service have concluded that in order to run an acceptable service, giving the best outcomes for the most people in their particular situation, they need to concentrate their HASUs in Musgrove and Dorchester, but not in Yeovil. I believe that we as a council have allowed and facilitated debate on this and have participated in the discussions and decision making as far as possible, listening to and emphasising the points made by many residents as far as possible. However, this is ultimately and primarily a clinical decision made by professionals and their governing bodies about how best to use the resources they have available. In an era where the rationing of services due to financial and staffing constraints is only too familiar to us here at Somerset Council, I can only add my concern and sympathy to those affected, and my hope that the new arrangements will not prove to be as unsatisfactory or damaging as is feared. Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies for asking the wrong person to respond. A look of horror on Liz's face. Okay, if we move on to the next speaker, which is Matt Harrison, please.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Really, it's not so much question as a statement I'd like to read out on behalf of Shepton Mallet Town Council and the charitable community benefit society that's been set up to save the Amulet Theatre. So I last spoke to you in May 2023 at the establishment of Somerset Council, and I'd just like to begin by thanking all councillors for your service to Somerset over the last 12 months, especially in very challenging financial times. My message last year was that Shepton Mallet Town Council, after years of lacking a strategic direction and joined up working ourselves, is now in a position of strength. We're about to complete our first four-year strategy, which has resulted in numerous improvements across the town. We have a richer events calendar, we've invested in our public realm, we've campaigned to protect facilities and services, and built relationships with businesses in the third sector to build resilience for the future. I still look forward to realising many of our asks of you last year. We still seek to have clarity on the future of the Shape Mendip campus, not a travel lodge, please, to take ownership of the West Shepton playing fields, to build a sports park, to devolve the Commercial Road car park, which is currently redundant town centre space, and to allow us to take over the running of our 750-year-old Friday market, which is hanging on by a thread. Last Friday, there were just 3 stalls there. But today and this week is actually an exciting time. For once the stars seem aligned, there is an opportunity which for Shepton Mallet could be completely transformational. The government's recently announced Culture Projects Levelling Up Fund has come at a critical juncture. One of our town centre landlords is looking to divest their property portfolio, which includes the Formula Amulet Theatre. The building, which is not in a good physical state, dominates our town centre and casts both a physical and metaphorical shadow over our town. Envisaged to provide the town as a cultural venue, it was perhaps before its time. I won't bore councillors today with a history lesson, but it has remained mostly empty for a decade and is fast decaying. Knowing that the building was up for sale, the Town Council commissioned a structural survey and commercial valuation. A charitable community benefit society has been established to model how to refurbish the building, and some initial funding has been won to model cultural and commercial plans to enable it to become a long-term viable project. Shepton Mallet has no theatre, it has no cinema, it has no leisure centre, it has no tourist information centre, it has no bank, it has no substantial indoor hireable venue space. It doesn't even have a town hall. We have a budding art scene, but that relies on a sporadic mix of spaces across town. Think disused shops and registry offices. The CCBS has already planned on making the Amulet a multi-user space. The project's already attracted support from numerous organisations from the arts and cultural sectors and national attention from architectural and theatre companies. What the project needs most is money. A bid was already being prepared for the Community Ownership Fund, but that would have only allowed a light touch opening. This new funding round could enable the facility to open from day one and positively impact the whole town. Frome has the cheese and grain, Wells has theatres and cinemas, Street has Strode Theatre and Cinema, Glastonbury has won the town fund. I understand Mendip towns are understandably vying for this money. But what matters here is the biggest impact on the most culturally underserved conurbation in the Mendips, Shepton Mallet. I would therefore ask you to consider the Amulet bids to help deliver an enterprising, flourishing and fairer Somerset. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Federica Smith-Roberts to reply.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for your question and bringing the Amulet Theatre to the wider council's audience. I had a really good meeting last week with your fellow councillors, Jane and Martin, alongside Councillor Theo Butt-Phillips, where we were not only talking about the market, but they were telling us about the Amulet Theatre and the plans. It is a really interesting and exciting time in Mendip in relation to the capital funding of £5 million that we've received from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities to spend on cultural projects in Mendip. And I really do appreciate the background information you have provided. As the lead member for Housing, Communities and Culture, I want to assure you that we have a process in place to work with the city and towns in Mendip to develop a list of potential projects that could benefit from the funding. The Cultural Directorate is leading this project and will collaborate with both internal and external stakeholders, including yourselves and the other town and city councils. And we, alongside that, had a good meeting yesterday with Historic England, the Heritage Lottery and the Arts Council in relation to this funding. I understand that the Amulet project is one of the projects on the list for consideration, and we are using a set of criteria to decide which projects to take forward to meet the tight deadlines that the department has set for us. We have tight deadlines in relation to spending that money, with it being just over a year, but also tight deadlines in relation to submitting our investment plans, with the original deadline being the 10th of May for all of the projects to be submitted to DLUC, but that has now been extended today to the 3rd of June. We will follow a critical path, and that ensures that we will continue to involve yourself, the other stakeholders, as well as those internally and externally alongside the MPs for the area. With regards to your comments around the future of both Shape Mendip and the other assets that Shepton Mallet Town Council would like, we will continue to work with the service directors and continue to have meetings alongside yourself to move those forward. We will continue to keep up to date with you, and do please email me if you have any further queries. Thank you for championing the Amulet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our final public speaker is Neil Rhodes. Do we have Mr. Rhodes in the audience? If not, can I ask Scott to read the question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Rhodes wishes to raise several concerns regarding alleged dishonesty and restrictions on democracy by council officers, as well as his ability to access senior managers.
Could I ask the leader to respond? Thank you.
Yes, indeed, and thanks for raising your concerns with us, Mr. Rhodes. To ensure that your concerns are thoroughly reviewed and addressed in a manner consistent with the Council's complaints policy, I'd request that you submit your details of your concerns in writing. A written record helps us to proceed with a formal evaluation and ensure that all necessary details are considered carefully. Please include any relevant information or documents that would assist in understanding or resolving the matters that you've raised. Once we've received your written submission, we'll initiate a review process as outlined in the complaints policy, and we'll keep you informed of our progress. We do thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We are committed to addressing your concerns promptly and efficiently. I have enjoyed our phone calls and email exchanges over the last year, and I would be more than happy to meet with you personally, myself, to address any of the concerns that you have remaining. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. That concludes the public question time, and I thank all of our questioners for coming forward. I'd like to now move to Appendix B of the attached schedule, which is a member's question, and ask Norman Cavill to put the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Residents have brought to my attention the many delays in providing the promised fibre to the premises in cluster DC9. This is Brewishton, Thornfalcon, North Curry, Stoke Gregory and Bowerbridge, an area that has abysmal broadband speeds at the moment, and hopefully Airband will improve them. But at the moment, they've consistently failed in their delivery timetable, with apparently no penalties or charges holding them to account. It's published information Airband, as part of its restructuring, is laying off some of its workforce. In fact, since broadband published its accounts, no one local has seen its workforce in that area. The area doesn't appear to be hugely challenging. It's got good road systems, and the poles are there ready to service the area. So one wonders how this reduction in workforce is going to improve the delivery of fibre to the premises. In recent Airband accounts, there's a statement that says there's a material uncertainty that may cast significant doubt that the whole group and the company's ability to continue as a going concern, a serious situation. There's also notable posts in the sheet balance events that set out that shares were issued for cash consideration of 33 million, bringing in some cash that's clearly been used since. In August 23, the major shareholder agreed a £56 million loan, and this facility was fully drawn down in February 24. The notes also evidence that following strategic review in February 24, the company commenced a restructuring of the business, to quote, to transition from a phase of rapidly building our network to focusing on commercializing the existing network. As a result of the revised strategy, the company anticipates incurring contractual penalties, restructuring costs, with a reduction in the recovery of grant income and capital expenditure. It would seem it needs to secure immediate revenue. So Airband has confirmed that its focus is now on commercializing its existing network, i.e. its sales, and that it's moved from the focus of building the network. This alone must surely be enough to question their contract, as Airband appears to be no longer concentrating on the contract to build fibre to the premises. And surely it's not in the county or Connecting Devon and Somerset interest to support a business that's not complying with its core contract to bring fibre to our rural areas. So is it not Somerset Council's role as the accountable body to monitor these contracts entered into with providers, both for accountability with timescales and financials. Penalties for failure generally form part of a sound contract and are generally used if needed. Please, at this time, I would ask you to carry out a critical review of Airband, and if you find they're not delivering, to very quickly take action, and if necessary, to award the contract to another provider. Furthermore, can you confirm that all funds provided to connecting Devon and Somerset and the Somerset Council intended to be used for connecting Devon and Somerset connectivity is being used for the said purposes? I would add at this point that a week in politics is a long time, but it is so in finance. Since I wrote this question, Airband has secured more funding from its parent company, but such funding, I believe, will be helping its further commercialization. So we want to see fibre to the premises, and taxpayers want to see value for their money and their promises fulfilled. Thank you.
Richard Wilkins to reply.
Thank you, Norman. In answer to your first question, yes, Somerset Council, as the accountable body, does monitor the contracts with the providers. The contract reflects the terms of Building Digital UK's standard template contract, which does not include contractual penalties for delay. Building Digital UK is the government's responsible agency and national competency centre for broadband delivery. The contracts are based on a gap-funded model in which public subsidy provides top-up to bridge the gap between the investment from the broadband supplier and the full cost of delivery to areas which are not commercially viable. These publicly subsidised contracts do not cover the full cost of the network built. The broadband supplier must cash flow the full cost of the network build until each required work item under the relevant contract, referred to as a milestone, is achieved and has been technically and financially assured by Somerset Council. In such contracts, the supplier therefore faces inherent commercial risk if it overspends or delays. Subject to contractual terms, the supplier cannot require more subsidy from the authority, and subsidy payments are only paid in relation to a milestone when the supplier has completed that milestone to an acceptable standard in accordance with the relevant contract. Question 2. Somerset Council and its partners in the CDS programme, that's Connecting Devon and Somerset programme, are aware of the reports that Airband has been restructuring and has seen the published accounts. Officers have met with Airband personnel to seek clarity about the impact of restructuring on CDS contracts. These discussions are ongoing and are commercially confidential. When the factual position becomes clearer, options can be considered, and it will be possible to provide updates to members, residents, businesses about the impact of Airband's restructuring on the CDS contract. For procurement and legal reasons, it would not be possible to award the contract to another provider. And finally, yes, grant funders only pay grants once the claim is made, supported by evidence of payment. Suppliers must achieve milestones, which then pass through technical and financial assurance before any payment can be made. Once Somerset has paid the milestone, it can then claim grant from the relevant grant provider. Thank you, Norman.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the questions. I've now changed and modified the order of the agenda, and I'd like now to move to item 9, which is the agenda item for motions. We'd like to start with item A, which is the motion on the plight of the Ukrainian people. and I would ask Mark Healy to introduce.
Thought I got a booming voice there for a minute before I turn it on. Anyway, I would say for a start, it gives me pleasure, but it doesn't actually. It's quite tragic, really, isn't it? So I would like to bring the following motion before this council. The motion being the plight to the Ukrainian people against the Russian aggressor led by Vladimir Putin, that this council notes, as a result of an ongoing conflict, over 1 million Ukrainians have been forced to leave the country fleeing the conflict, and that many of those people have been remained in the country are facing a humanitarian crisis. This council stands in solidarity with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people against Putin's illegal invasion, along with their friends and relatives here in the Somerset. This council notes Somerset's proud record of supporting refugees fleeing from Afghanistan, Syria and many other conflicts, helping them to settle in Somerset. The full council hopefully will therefore continue to provide support locally to Ukraine refugees, working in collaboration with local voluntary and community sector. This council will call on government to continue to provide essential aid to Ukraine by sending a letter to the Prime Minister from the chair of this council. And may I respectfully ask that all councillors do vote in favour in supporting this motion, and to show the council's ongoing support for our fellow human beings against a tyrant regime. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. If I could now move to Henry Hobhouse, who is seconding the motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I can wait till the end, come in, please.
Okay, I would like to open it up for councillors if they wish to comment. Councillor Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support this motion. Somerset and our residents have been very generous in hosting Ukrainians within our communities, offering their spare rooms for people fleeing the war and seeking refuge in a safe place. And as long as this continues, we will respect the wishes of the people of Somerset by continuing to welcome and support Ukrainians. The scheme is currently open until March 2025 that the government has set up, and a recent change has been made, however, to the length of time a visa is issued for, from 3 years to 18 months for all new applications. Whilst we did not anticipate the war in Ukraine to last this long, we expect the government to continue supporting the scheme until it is safe for the Ukrainian people to return home. Out of the original 1,900 refugees hosted in Somerset, 428 have returned home and only 54 have moved to another local authority. Nearly 800 people have left their host accommodation and are now living in private rental, with most adults working and contributing within the communities. There have also been 22 families housed in the 27 local authority housing fund properties that we have purchased through the LAHF scheme. And this has been so rewarding for all of our communities to see the positive effects on families to have a place to call home. It has been a huge benefit for Somerset to have these communities and for these houses to be part of it. Our core value within the Displaced People Service that sits within the Communities Directorate is that Somerset seeks to provide an inclusive welcome to all displaced people, regardless of the route or scheme by which they arrive. And we seek to promote their independence and integration through securing accommodation, access to health and education, and the provision of wraparound support as close as possible to their new communities. We could not do that without the residents of Somerset supporting them and the many voluntary communities and groups that look to make that happen. So fully support us continuing this.
Fran Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very happy to support this motion. I think it raises, and with the information that Councillor Smith-Roberts has given, I think for many who don't realise the amount of work that Somerset Council has been putting into supporting not only the Ukrainians but also the Afghan refugees. I chair the Somerset Migration Board and working with partners and obviously the many people who have been provided homes for people coming from Ukraine. We have, as a council and as a county, been very welcoming, and I think we will hope to continue this, and we will continue with support from the government to be able to provide support for anybody who comes here from not only Ukraine, but also Afghanistan. And I'm very proud of the work that our officers have been doing, working with the many different partnerships in enabling the work that has been happening over the past couple of years, and hopefully it will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other hands, so I will go back to the proposed and seconder to have their closing remarks before we vote. Mark Healy to start.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you to colleagues. I won't say on the other side of the chair, the chamber, that's not right, but I'd like to thank you for your welcomed support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Henry, would you like to conclude?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This motion was actually asked to be put forward in March. Now it has become slightly too late because the Americans, as you know, are now cleared the payment that Ukraine needs to defend itself, and the British have done the same thing this week. Without those payments and without those ammunition, the Ukrainians will be overrun this summer. And I thank you all for your support.
Thank you. The motion has been put and seconded. Could I see a show of hands? All those in favour? Anyone against? And any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. So we move to B, which is the motion relating to council property investment. And I would ask Brian Smedley to introduce, please.
Okay, thank you very much. You'll note that an altered version of the motion has been circulated in accordance with the council's alteration procedures, and the seconder, Councillor Collins, has supported this. So I trust you'll accept me to speak on the altered motion. It's around everybody's table and it's on emails as well that have gone round.
Yes, that's fine. If you'd like to continue,
Okay, thank you. So the purpose of the motion in front of you today is to end this council's investment in Elbit Systems and therefore potential complicity in the current historic and ongoing carnage in Palestine. It further aims to establish an ethical investment policy for this council. And this is not a new idea, and I've been arguing this position since 2020, when the former owners, Sedgemoor District Council, when I was the leader of the opposition there. It was also the first thing I asked for when I was elected to county in May 2022, and when the ownership was transferred across during the unitary process. So the background to this investment, as you'll know, is the government's withdrawal of rate support funding, which compelled council to seek replacement funding. On Sedgemoor, as in many other places, they set up things like property investment boards and gave a large number of money to invest in mixed portfolio of commercial properties with the target of getting a return on that. I was a non-voting member on that board as leader of the opposition, and I urged at the time that all investments should be ethical and also I argued ideally locally. But in Sedgemoor 2020, in January 2020, Sedgemoor obtained the Aztec West property with Elbit Systems as the tenant, and incidentally Co-op Legal Services are the occupier of the second block, and they did that in January 2020. So I didn't have a vote on that, and I just spoke against it. Sedgemoor went ahead and did that. They invested in that despite they knowing the controversial nature of it. Indeed, they were advised at the time by their property advisors, who said some councils would not wish to take on a property with an Israeli defence manufacturer as a tenant. So they knew that. It seemed that Sedgemoor wasn't one of those councils. So in 2020, there wasn't the current level of carnage in Palestine that we see today, but Israel was nevertheless behaving aggressively in the occupied territories and regularly using high-tech weapons against civilians. And so protesters have been active since then against this long before the current aggression. And to be clear, Elbit Systems, as you all should know by now, is an Israeli-owned defence manufacturer specialising in drone systems for military aircraft, helicopters, armed remote control boats, land vehicles for command and control, and is heavily engaged in the militarisation of borders worldwide, not just in Palestine. It has electronically controlled walls and borders in the occupied Palestinian territories, and that's been since 2002. And it's a self-proclaimed leader in border surveillance technologies. The council was aware of the controversial nature of Elbit Systems. However, I don't think the council truly appreciated the consequences of such investment until protesters directly targeted Sedgemoor Council offices in June 2021. And the Labour Council at the time called on Sedgemoor to adopt an ethical investment policy, and I again raised the moral choice of divestment. I got the impression that they were going to divest, in fact, but they didn't. They just passed it on for Somerset to have to deal with. Sadly, now Somerset, this council has to deal with the outcome of that. When Sedgemoor came to an end in 2023, I approached the new council to ask that whether they would consider divestment, and I was assured that this was the route they were going to go down. However, we've not yet had this divestment. What we have had up since then, of course, is a major flare-up in Palestine, in Gaza in particular, with more than 30,000 Palestinian lives lost as a result of Israel using high-tech weapons to destroy a community and devastate a piece of land. And that piece of land, if you put it on a map of Somerset, stretches just from Taunton to Glastonbury. That's the small bit of land that is being devastated by these systems. So Elbit are clearly complicit in that horror, and therefore Somerset is as well, unless they do divest. So this motion recognises that the council has attempted to find ways to divest, and it comes at a time, of course, as you know, we're divesting anyway. We're trying to get rid of everything due to financial crisis. The motion also supports that the inevitable divestment, but in addition urges immediate action to find legal ways to evict Elbit, so that we no longer are complicit in this devastation of lives. It further underlines the need for 100% ethical commercial investment policy, so this kind of deplorable investment doesn't happen again. This comes at a time when the world is increasingly urging an end to arms sales to Israel. This needs to happen now. The UK government needs to back this. That signal alone would lead to instant divestment and provide the legal grounds for this council to be no longer complicit. Israel has to live in peace with their neighbours, and Palestine has to be free.
Thank you. Could I now move to Shane Collins, please? Shane Collins, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this has been a difficult motion to get agreement on the wording, taking many hours last night and this morning. And it's worth noting and thanking Councillor Brian Smedley, Ali Morgan and Palestine Action and the leader of the council for their quite large amounts of time spent on this. And also because, like many other people in the world, we are in a problem that is not of our own making. This is a legacy investment that we are currently trying to get rid of for commercial reasons. What is going on in Gaza reminds me of the film Zone of Interest. That human condition which allows us to ignore terrible things which may not affect us directly in day-to-day life, but has appalling consequences for others. So I welcome this motion as it opens the way to look at legal routes for eviction. Our lease with Elbit, section 12.3, allows for forfeiture or eviction if the tenant does anything which is, I quote, illegal or immoral, or which would cause a nuisance of any damage or any damage to the landlord, end quote. The Public Interest Law Centre, having taken advice from Garden Court Chambers and Liz Davis, KC, certainly feel there is evidence of illegal or immoral activity. And I think in our heart of hearts, we are all disgusted at the catastrophe unfolding in Gaza and UK's continued arms sales to the IDF. Somerset's legal view is that Aztec West is an office, albeit the head office of Elbit UK, and not where weapons are actually made. I suspect in court the company headquarters would be as culpable as the company factory, if not more so. I note also a 70-page letter from the Law Centre was sent yesterday with further legal advice, which I hope we will be able to act upon. Elbit UK supplies 85% of the IDF's military drone fleet. They make many of the over 100,000 shells which the IDF has fired on Gaza using the artificial intelligence Lavender system, which comes up with the targets and gives a human 20 seconds to agree or disagree with AI Lavender's generated targets with huge collateral damage. There is a slow starvation happening with increasing malnutrition. More than 33,000 civilians killed, 70% of whom are women and children, with many thousands more buried under the rubble. We will all look back in a few years' time and wonder how the IDF got away with it. There are two aggressive wars going on at the moment, one in Gaza and one in Ukraine. And it is worth asking what we would do if we had a Russian company making weapons in a Somerset property. My feeling is we should do the same for Elbit and Gaza. I urge you to vote for this motion.
Thank you. Okay, I would now like to open it up for other councillors' views if they wish to comment. Yes, Bill.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Brian and Shane for bringing this motion before council and for your constructive dialogue in making sure that we had words that we were legally able to be allowed to pass. And I'd like to also thank our officers who've been working hard on this, both in terms of understanding the legal position that we are in with this investment and in looking to bring this forward for disposal. Councillor Smedley has very helpfully outlined the history of this investment and how it has come from one of our predecessor councils and at a different context of time in which it was purchased, and we can't go back in time to change that decision. However, he, like I, was an opposition councillor in Sedgemoor. I was uncomfortable with that decision. I was against it, but when it's made, you move on. At the start of Somerset Council, when we took on this investment, Councillor Smedley contacted me and I did discuss with colleagues divesting from this at the earliest opportunity. Events have tragically and awfully overtaken that process because of the situation that we see in Gaza and also the ongoing situation in the West Bank. And we are very, very acutely aware that many of our residents are passionately upset that Somerset Council has this in our commercial holding in that context. We are seeking to find legal routes to end this tenancy. However, our advice from our lawyers at the moment is that we have no legal grounds for eviction, but we are open and will study the 70-page letter we received yesterday from Palestine Action to see whether that gives us any route forwards to legal eviction. The other alternative, which we've been actively exploring and our officers have been working extremely hard on, is the sale of this commercial investment. And we do have to recognise that we have legal responsibilities to get a market value for this property when it comes onto the market as well. So I'm happy to support this motion as it comes forward as it's written now. I believe it gives us a route through to continue to look at what we are doing, which is to explore whether there is a legal route to eviction, but also to divest from this property, to sell it from our commercial property for yield. And we also need to make sure that should we be in the situation where in the future we are investing in commercial property for yield, we take into account moral and ethical considerations into any of our decision making at that point, so that we don't end up in a situation where we hold an investment which a significant number of our residents feel morally uncomfortable in us holding. Just to reiterate, we do not wish to hold this tenant and this property in the long term. We are actively looking to divest of it, and we are exploring whether there are any legal routes to evict the tenant, and fully recognise the very passionate and legitimate concerns that have been raised with us today and over the previous weeks. And I do hope that colleagues will feel able to support this motion as it's written. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Mansell.
Thank you. I too support this motion, and I would like to congratulate the good work of those who've contributed to it and the good speeches that have just been given by Brian, Shane and Bill to give support to it. I certainly welcome that. I just briefly wish to add that I was also one of those councillors at Somerset West and Taunton who raised strong questions about what were we doing making these commercial investments. At the time, I was in a small minority, but I think what I said at that time hasn't taken long to come to show I was making some good points, and I wish we'd listened to them for the investments that other district councils had made as well. Possibly this is the worst example of what happened during that period. Now, as has been said, the council should have no connection in supporting Elbit's weapons manufacture in the UK and the devastation that has caused in Gaza. We should not have got into this situation, but I very much welcome what Bill has just said with regard to having a moral and an ethical guidance to decisions that we should take, and that is really important to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. Thank you.
David Fothergill.
Thank you very much indeed, and I welcome the debate and the motion coming forward. I think it's absolutely right that we should debate such a terrible situation in the Middle East, and I think that it's right that we do it in a very grown-up and mature way across this chamber, because I think it enables us to represent our views in a calm atmosphere, and I welcome that. So thank you for that. I feel that this motion falls into two parts, though. And I'd just like to debate the two parts, because I think debating it will help us to understand a little bit more. So the first part is about working to find legal ways of evicting Elbit. I'd just like to understand how that part of the motion fits with the recommendations which were approved at the Property and Investment Executive Subcommittee, which were voted through and therefore do have a legal position. Which talks about writing to Elbit to request an urgent meeting, and then for the interim head of legal services and section 151 officer to report back at the next meeting of the actions. So how does the first part of this motion sit with those actions? And then the second part, which is my bigger concern, because I think that's a direction of travel which we will head in. My bigger concern is the second part, which is about the ethical. Got to bring it up now. Part of the problem here is that this motion was being rewritten until 11:15 this morning, and I'm not sure that we've fully considered what the impact of that second part is. So if I have it in front of me, here we go. To ensure that moral and ethical considerations assume equal weight to financial advantage in any commercial property investments for yield. So the first part of that I received this morning just talked about commercial investment, and I was very worried about the pension scheme, and I wrote to the leader about it, and I assume that's why it's been changed. But I would still like to have legal advice, clear legal advice, that we're not setting a policy which is hamstringing our pensions funds. And I'd also like us to think through what the implications of setting that part of the motion are, because it could have implications on other parts of Somerset Council's business. For example, we have business centres where we have EDF Nuclear. We also own county farms where there's big debates about farming practices. There are other examples of investments that we have which are morally and ethical debatable. And I would not want us to put through a second part of a motion just because we want to make it rounded and create a situation which we then have to live with in the future. And to get it only a short time before this meeting and have to think through those consequences, I think are wrong. So I think the first part is a direction of travel and will get voted through. I'm absolutely sure because of the strength of feeling. But the second part, I think I just couldn't vote for that at the moment because as a pension trustee for over 20 years, as a member of the pension fund here, I'm just not sure that we've thought through the full implications of that, and I wouldn't want it to come back and bite this council in any way.
Andy Dingwall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo exactly what Councillor Fothergill's just said. The second part of here, we would need to understand the specific framework by which we're going to judge moral and ethical investments beyond, and what that means beyond the current scrutiny process that commercial investments undergo, which is all we already have considerations in that area when we're making decisions. I'm also interested in understanding when we say all ways of legally evicting. The leaders mentioned we're exploring that in great depth. Will we, as a council, see a potential financial risk report of a legal challenge should the tenants decide to challenge our eviction if and when we make that? Thank you.
Okay, and the next Peter C will come back. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to come back at this point. I'm aware that it's not my motion, so I'm not sure on the procedure. And I think I've been named, but I'm not going to get worried about that one. So can I suggest you proceed with the debate? I'm making some notes, and I may wish to respond if that's acceptable to you, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Peter Siebes next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to set a first in the chamber. I agree with the Leader of the Opposition. I raised these points. I raised these points with leadership myself. I think it's very important that we are very careful to take advice with respect to those parts of the council function, which are not just the pension fund, where we are actually constrained by either the conditions of monies given to us or legal provisions, and in particular the pension fund is covered in such constraints, as you probably know. However, I won't be supporting this motion, and the reason I won't be supporting this motion is because I actually think it basically slurs the people working in the premises at the moment without having the basis of evidence. We do not actually at this present know whether there is anything illegal or immoral going on in the premises, and the law around property is very tightly drawn, and we have to bear in mind that if we were to attempt an eviction, it might well be tested against us. That would be an expensive process for both parties, and indeed, if we were to lose that, it would be a fairly significant commitment of expenditure, which might have unknown consequences. And I'm concerned, obviously, not to get into any unlimited consequences. That puts us straight into financial problems and possibly the 141. Oh, sorry, 114. So I wouldn't want to go there from a practical perspective, but I'm also conscious that the people working in that building include many engineers and administrators that actually live within our county, and we're judging them and we're aligning them and saying that they endorse the behaviours of the Israeli government. And I think the real culprit here is the political leadership of Israel, and particularly the Israeli government, and some of the individuals, particularly, I'm thinking at the West Bank, which hasn't actually been recognised. It's referred to as, we're talking about occupied territories here, where the position of this nation is that it's not formally the right of Israel to stomp round settlements and so on. We don't recognise those as legitimate. And that is where some of the immoral behaviour is taking part. And also in Gaza, where it's clear to me that this is not measured, directed, proportionate military action. They are not judging the matter in the way that we would as a nation. There's no way I can defend that. I think that is horrid. But to take people who have effectively their work in the northern part of Bristol, some of whom I know live in Somerset, and to associate those individuals with the Israeli government's choices.
Could we please let the councillor speak? Please.
With respect, we are all entitled to separate opinions. We don't all have to have the same opinion. Please tolerate the fact that I disagree with you in the same way.
Peter, could you continue with your?
I just think that we're acting without evidence of wrongdoing. We're acting on an emotional basis, and I think this decision is premature. So I'm afraid I can't support the motion.
Diego Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. The concern I have around this motion is really one of principle, really, and also the sort of precedent it sets as well. We don't know what the future may hold for this council, which other tenants we may have in the future, if any, maybe not, but if any, or what other tenants are doing at this very moment. I think what Peter Sieb said, kind of agree with as well, that as far as we know, they haven't conducted any illegal activity, but I don't want to talk too much about them. I think the principle for me is once you decide to evict a tenant because you don't like what they may be doing or what they may be saying, that opens a door to you doing the same to others. And what concerns me is the confidence. What confidence does this give to businesses when they're looking at Somerset Council to do business with them, whether it's as a tenant or anything else? Do they have to think twice and think to themselves, what can we or can we not say that may upset the Somerset Council to lead them to not do business with us in the future? I'm feel very uneasy about that message and the point of principle that businesses should be free to do as they wish within obviously legal parameters, and we shouldn't dictate to them what we expect from them or whether what they're doing we think is wrong or right and chuck them out as a result of it. But I get this is an emotional subject. And I respect the opinions that have been put forward. What I don't want the businesses to get is the message of we don't like you, so we'll shut you down or not do business with you. That's not the way we should conduct ourselves. And I had a resident, just to finish off, that said to me when they looked at this motion, they said to me, if Somerset Council chucks out this business because they don't like what they're doing, will they next be banning J.K. Rowling books from the libraries because we don't like what she's saying? I'm not saying I agree with that, but that was a message that was put to me by a resident. So I shan't be voting for this motion.
Mark Healy.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to agree with my colleague over there, actually, what he's just said, because I believe we're on very dangerous ground here. Seriously dangerous ground. You know, we're talking about evictions of companies. We're talking about all sorts of things that could put this council in a very peculiar position, both legally and I'll use the word morally, because I have to say that this should be set aside, this motion at the moment, go through the legal process and come back when possibly colleagues or officers and lawyers have spoken to Elbit, because I don't think they're going to go down without fight. I think they're going to stand their ground and say, try and get rid of us then. Because also, if this council is not careful, we're straight into very, very dangerous ground and we could be accused of being anti-Semitic. I know that's controversial. But like the gentleman over there said, we've all got our opinions. So I would like to maybe make a motion that this is set aside, looked at by our lawyers after it's been discussed with Elbit in hierarchy, and come back to this council, maybe at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Martin Dimery, I wanted to go. Could members of the public please let the councillors have
Thank
the
you,
voice?
Mr. Chairman. At the last meeting of this full council, we passed a motion to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Was that not a moral and ethical decision? And when it comes to our pension, we have very complicated pension arrangements in the council. Our pensions are tied to other councils. and to a larger organisation. And those of us that have been willing this council to divest from oil for the last 7 years have had no success whatsoever with it. So I don't really think that that's a cogent or likely argument. I'm looking at the tenancy agreement here that we have. It says the tenant shall not do anything on the premises, this is the Elbit premises, which is illegal or immoral, or which would cause a nuisance or any damage to the landlord or any owner or occupier of any other property adjoining or near the premises. I would contend that we have had nuisance, we have had damage. And what may be done in the Court of International Courts would be considered by Elbit illegal. Thank you.
Sarah Wakefield.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to answer a couple of the questions that have been raised. The purpose of the Property Investment Subcommittee writing to Elbit, my understanding was to ask them what use they are making of the property, because you can't tell whether somebody's abusing or going outside the terms of use unless you've asked them what they're actually doing there. So that seems to me to be a very sensible way forward. I would point out, I mean, I am a lawyer, as probably people know, when you let a property, you do know who the tenant is. So when this property was let, the person who let it to them, I think was a company, knew who the tenant was and should have found out who the tenant was. If they didn't like it, then maybe they should have put something in the lease to say, you're not allowed to sell weapons to Israel, if that's what they didn't like. Probably wouldn't have taken the lease at that point. And certainly when Sagamore Moor Council bought the premises, they also knew what the tenant did. At least they should have done. I just wanted to take issue with what Dave Mansell said. At Somerset Western Taunton, we bought properties and there was argument about whether we should, but we did it because the government said you should do this to get some more money. And the other councils did the same thing because we didn't have enough money to provide the services we wanted to. So you can't wrap all the other properties up with this one. I think this one is different, and I have great sympathy with other people in this room about how they feel about what's happening in the Middle East. I think we all do, and we want it to stop immediately, and we said that at our last council meeting as well. My problem is also, I have to say, with the second part of this wording, it's a question of whose morals are we talking about. These are not legally defined terms. Illegal or immoral in a lease means having a brothel there. It doesn't mean, usually doesn't mean against international law. For example, when it talks about affecting the adjoining tenants, it's because if you run a brothel from premises, you're bringing the premises next door into disrepute. So that is the usual meaning of it. And in the letter we've received with the legal advice that our friends over there have had, it talks about a test case. Now, we in this council in our financial emergency we can't take a test case. It's open-ended financially about what happens if you do that. And very sadly, I feel that. I would love to throw them out tomorrow, but I don't think we can do it legally. I don't believe that. I also don't believe in Somerset Council, in this area, we have other people manufacturing weapons and helicopters and things like that that are used in war. And we are not saying as a council that we believe all this should stop. I am worried that this sort of wording slightly says that. And rather, I have to say, this wording needs to be very carefully defined. I can vote for any of this except the last two lines about moral and ethical considerations. I think it should say, to ensure that moral and ethical considerations are properly considered as well as financial advantage in any future. Just because, we should look at those, of course we should, but sometimes I want our council to be commercial after all. We need to look at the commercial advantage too. But we would never, I believe, we would never let to Elbit Systems. We would never have done that lease. We would never do it now. And I'm sorry that we've got it, but I won't be able to vote in favour of this. I shall either abstain unless you want to change the wording, as I've suggested.
Lucy Trimnell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wakefield has said what I would say, but far better. I suppose what I would say that for me, it's the principle and the precedent that could be set that concerns me. When we have a legal consideration, we have set parameters. When you have moral or ethical considerations, there aren't any parameters. It is up to the individual, and I may feel completely differently to Councillor Rodriguez about something. in those terms. And my concern is that we open ourselves up further and further to difficulties down the line in the decisions that we make. And as you say, in the financial situation that we're in at the moment, I don't think we can afford to put ourselves in that situation.
Michael Dunk.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of it has been said really from the benches over here, but I just wanted to stress that the tenancy agreement says any damage to the landlord, nuisance or any damage to the landlord. And I think this particular landlord is suffering from reputational damage. And that's the big point here. I think whatever the council does, it was a mistake to have an asset like that, which we inherited. But also, I think if we pursue a legal claim to evict this tenant, I'm not sure who's going to pay for it, because it's not cheap to employ barristers and counsel. That's just one question. But I think we need to commit to looking into this and hopefully evicting Elbit if at all possible. And if that isn't possible legally or financially, because we don't have the funds, and that's unfortunately an argument that enters into it at the moment, then we can do the next best thing, which is to sell it. But unfortunately, I think evicting the tenant would send out the signals that we're not happy with what our tenant is involved in. They may not be making anything on the premises, but admin is the same thing, as Shane Collins has pointed out. Thank you.
Caroline Ellis.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. Can we just check the facts that were asserted there? Does the lease actually say it's damage to the landlord?
It will take me a few minutes to look that up, but I will look that up.
Okay, if we move on to Caroline Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say anything. I was hoping that, we would all unite around it. I still hope that as many of us as possible will unite around Councillor Smedley and Councillor Collins' motion, because I think it does express something very powerful. And we, as Somerset, said we would put the heart back into Somerset. We have values. We're supposed to have values as politicians, and they don't stop at the boundaries of Somerset. And what everyone has got to bear in mind, this is a very unusual situation. This is a probable genocide. We are letting property to a company that is integral to a probable genocide. I don't quite get what the probable bit is. To me, it would be a bit more clear cut than that. This is a really unusual situation. And I think in the light of that, that's why we need to reaffirm the second bit of the motion. We do need to reaffirm our belief that moral and ethical considerations do factor into any letting of any property, commercial or otherwise. People out there need to know that. They need to know what kind of a council we are. We do have values, and we do care about what happens, not just to our own children, but children over the other side of the world. This is a probable genocide.
Thank you. Mandy Chilcott.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've heard some powerful debate today, but I will come back to the Property and Investments Executive Subcommittee. There was a course of action there, which I absolutely supported. We are looking for some clarification on what the situation is. We do not want to put this council at huge financial risk, and actually probably the only time ever I agree with much of what Councillor Wakefield said just now. So doesn't happen often, but it has happened today. I want to know that if this motion falls, I'd like some reassurance that those actions that were outlined in the Property and Investments Executive Subcommittee will still take place. I feel they're the right way forward, and I'd just like confirmation that that is the case, please, Chair.
Liz Lation.
Thank you, Chair. If you may just indulge me a few moments, please, I would like to read out those agreed actions that came from the subcommittee on Monday, the 15th of April. So with apologies to those who were in the room and have heard this already, apologies as well to all members who received this by email from Democratic Services. So the Executive Subcommittee tasks officers with the following. One, that the Service Director, Strategic Asset Management, write to Elbit UK requesting an urgent meeting to discuss and clarify the current and future use of their premises at Aztec West and report back to the next meeting of the subcommittee following that meeting. I would hope that all councillors would support that. And secondly, that the interim head of legal services and the Section 151 officer report to the next meeting of the subcommittee on the potential options available to the council as landlord of the office building at 600 Aztec West in the light of the recent public concerns and protests, and with the risks and benefits attached to each of those options, including A, the implications, if any, for the financial stability of Somerset Council, and B, the opinions of the Section 151 officer, the monitoring officer, and the external auditor. I believe that those recommendations that were approved unanimously are as sound today as they were on Monday, the 15th of April. I do not believe that the motion we are looking at today is exclusive of those recommendations. It is phrased differently. I believe there is more emotion in the room today, but there are more members in the room. That subcommittee was just 4 members. I think we have to bear in mind, as has been mentioned already, that an open-ended financial implication could cause our Section 151 officer to call a Section 114 notice immediately. We took a decision in the budget setting of the first year to not invest in further commercial investments. We took a decision in budget setting of February, well, actually, that was taken by executive in November, but it was repeated in budget setting in February of this year that we dispose of commercial investments. And we did that in order to gain government support for the exceptional financial support we needed through a capitalisation direction in order to set a legal budget for 24-25. We also need, in my view, Chair, time for the interim head of legal to spend proper time on the 70 pages that were only received yesterday. And I hope that we can find some way to enable those opinions of the 151 officer, the monitoring officer, the interim head of legal services, and the external auditor to come forward so that this council is fully and correctly informed. So I'm not saying I support or don't support. I'm just saying that we are in a fragile financial position. I will be the first to say that because that is my responsibility to say it. And what we decide must always take that into account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Stephen Page. Are you having problems with the microphone?
Yes, I have a speaker. Yeah. I'll just make a brief comment because I think people have made some very good points on both sides. But I think there's a time when you have to stand up for what you believe in. There's a famous quote along the lines of that evil happens when good people do nothing. And I think Somerset Council should stand up and make a moral decision about this. And I strongly support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, can I welcome you to your first council meeting? Moving on, Graham Oakes, please.
Thank you, Chair.
My intention when I read the latest version of this motion was to support it for all the obvious reasons. The proposer managed to persuade me that I was wrong. And I'll explain why. Firstly, the first part of the motion and the talk about should we be getting rid of the building, the Albert building. Well, the government is very keen on us to get rid of all our commercial investments, including the good ones. So there's a logic to getting rid of one that's a bad one that mistakenly was, in my view, was purchased by a district council with a particular tenant. I do not have some of the concerns of some of the people about people involved in military items. I grew up in Yeovil. You know, we made Spitfires that kind of kept this country free, and we made helicopters since. And only recently I witnessed one of them land on a football pitch where one of our supporters was very ill. But I'm also aware that our helicopters are used in other ways. And I think it'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I said, I don't want Westlands, Leonardo's, whatever, to make helicopters, because I do. Now, the first part of the motion, I'm happy to support. The second part, I thought, was narrower, but it was very clear that actually it's an attempt to create an ethical investment policy for this council. Now, Tony Locke and I have argued for years about the pensions and this. Can I tell you, I used to be chair of a big pension fund, Devon County Council one. It was massive. I had a great time. And we were given legal advice that said, you have a choice. If you wish to use this money, you can use it for ethical investment, well, ethical disinvestment, and that'll make you feel good, but you won't achieve anything. Or you can do corporate governance, and we use corporate governance. We used our shareholding against British Gas, if you remember the bonus scandal, and against South West Water and others. And we actively tried to improve the situation. So I do not support a policy where people make themselves feel better but don't change the situation. And that's my view of ethical disinvestment. I think the people who support it, I think they're wrong. But that's the second half of this motion. I would happily vote for it if we could remove the last, however many words it was, about the investment policy, because today, I actually believe that the people who've turned up are concerned about one issue and one horrific situation and aren't actually overly interested in where we go forward with other investments, to whether we upset the NFU or the RSPCA or whatever else. That can and will come later. So I think the motion is stretched too far. And certainly if it was split in two halves, I could vote two different ways. If it could be shortened, then I'd happily support it.
Thank you. Mike Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard from a few members today about the problem with perhaps confusing all defence manufacturing as being in the firing line here. It isn't. It's a false comparison trying to equate Elbit with other Somerset defence manufacturers, in my view. I'm not aware that the UK is allowing the current supply of weapons to any other countries held by the ICJ to be plausibly committing genocide. That's the key here. I don't agree with Councillor Healy's view that we should take legal advice. We've received, free of charge, legal advice penned by the former President of the Supreme Court and 600 other lawyers, in which they advise that the UK government risks breaching international law in continuing to allow the supply of weapons from the UK to Israel. I'm persuaded by that legal opinion. I'm very concerned that we, as a council, in facilitating Elbit's activities, may also be in the same legal jeopardy that Baroness Hale holds the government potentially to be in. And turning to the motion itself, the second part, which seems to have caused a bit of excitement, refers specifically to future commercial property investments for yield. It doesn't talk about the pension fund, does it? It's about commercial property investments. The pension issue is a red herring. And I think just finally on that particular issue, given where we are with our commercial property investments, Who in this room genuinely thinks we're going to be going out into the market to invest in future properties for yield? It's not going to happen, is it? So it's a bit of a red herring trying to oppose this motion on that basis, in my view. So for those reasons, I will be voting for the motion.
Mike Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd echo a lot of the comments made by Liz about finances and that Mark Rigby's just made, and also those of Sarah Wakefield. Although on that point, it seems to me, although the words she proposes, which are to replace assume equal weight with as properly are properly considered, as well as, I think her words would be slightly better if the proposers of the motion wanted to accept that. We may not find a legal basis for eviction. That's the way the motion is worded. That allows the possibility that we may not find one. But if we do, we should use it. The point I want to concentrate on is that a lot of the arguments that have been advanced for not supporting all of this motion are slippery slope arguments or thin end of the wedge arguments. You know, if we do this, it will start a progress towards something else. Those arguments are almost never valid because we're free in a democratic society to make a decision each step of the way. And if we decide at a certain particular step to do X, that doesn't prevent us deciding if next time there's a similar-ish decision to say Y. So I always reject those kinds of arguments. If you look at this particular one, there are two issues here. First, subsection is about weapons and Elbit, and the second is about moral and ethical versus financial. Well, on weapons and weapons delivery systems, I mean, Graham has made the point that we have plenty of companies in Somerset that produce weapons and delivery systems. When we're talking about sending them to Ukraine, we tend to support that. I certainly do. When we're talking about if we were being asked to support sending them to the Israel Defense Force, we wouldn't support it. I certainly wouldn't. So, you know, we make a decision on each time that this comes up. So if you then look at the moral and ethical considerations, we all have those from time to time. For instance, I run my own pension fund. I have to decide whether I invest in tobacco companies or not, and whether I invest in military companies or not. The pension fund can make those decisions for itself as well. The motion doesn't prevent it. So I'm going to support the motion for the reasons I've just outlined. We can decide each situation on its merits. And the merits of the current situation in Palestine are clearly that something really bad things are being done. They were started by Hamas. They've been made far worse by the Israeli government. And we should be making it very clear that we don't in any way condone or support that, and we'll do everything we can, tiny bit, given that we're a Somerset Council, the tiny bit we can to contribute towards getting the Israeli government to move in the right direction. Thanks.
Before we move down the list of councillors, can I just come back to Jill on the legal point, just to clarify?
Yes, Chair, the clause in the lease is 12.3, restrictions on use. So that's restrictions on use of the premises. And 12.3.2 reads, the tenant shall not do anything on the premises which is illegal or immoral, or which would cause a nuisance or any damage to the landlord or any owner or occupier of any other property adjoining or near the premises. So the nuisance or damage that clause refers to is linked to the use of those premises and to buildings and properties nearby. So it's not a general clause. It would not be interpreted in that way.
Thank you. Simon Carswell.
Thank you, Chair. I don't normally speak at meetings, and when I do, I'm normally flippant, but I'm going to be passionate about this, I'm afraid. I totally support the resolutions. We have got to show as a council that we are not going to be the same as our government in not taking the lead by abstaining or voting against UN resolutions and towing the American line. Financial considerations are important, but they shouldn't make a difference. This is genocide, and we should be making a stand. In the Second World War, if Bosch, Siemens had been in that premises, I have no doubt we'd be debating the same financial implications and erring on the side of maybe we should or maybe we shouldn't make a statement. We should be supporting this. And I think, just to say as well, there are more than 2 wars going on. There's genocide happening in Sudan. There are British weapons killing people in Yemen. And we shouldn't forget that as well, just because it's not in Europe or on our doorstep. But I will be fully supporting the motion. I hope that everybody else will do too.
John Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I won't say what everybody else has already said. It seems to me we are not as one on this, although in the majority are for the motion. I too am for the motion, but the first part only. I'm very concerned about the second part, and I'm just wondering whether or not we could ask Councillor Smedley to perhaps either delete that or make the changes which I did agree but can't remember from Councillor Wakefield. So whether or not we could add hers as an adjustment to this, and whether Councillors Smedley and Collins would agree to that. I most certainly would vote for this if it were just the top section, exploring a way of legally evicting LBUK. UK. Thank you, Chair.
Bente, you're next.
Goes with fighting and arguing with scrupulous landlords that are renting out horrible flats to people who can hardly afford to be there. And they are getting ill, like I am being ill now in sitting in this air condition. I want to say that I feel so terrible sad for the Palestinian people. They were sold in 1948, and it has been nothing but down the hill ever since. I would like us to do something rapidly, but not by becoming just as bad as landlord as those that I'm fighting in Shepton Mallet. Therefore, I will suggest that we all get hold of an MP and tell the MP to go back to London and then make sure that the Prime Minister will not just be quiet, but would actually put his signature where it counts. I will gladly vote for the first part, but I will not ruin the council here by saying they should become a bad landlord. So I will not do that, but I will vote for the first part. And I will gladly do it because there's nothing wrong with my history upbringing.
Dixie Darch.
Thank you. In a way, Councillor Hunt has stolen my thunder. I was going to say that if Councillor Wakefield wanted to, I don't know if she can do an amendment or if we need to go to the proposers. I'd be happy to kind of second that. I will support this motion, whatever, but I really do understand members' concerns about the safety of our council. I think that's like a really, the financial security, like looking forward. I think that is an important issue as well. So if we could tighten up that wording, I would be happier. Thank you.
Tom Deacon.
May I raise a point of order, please?
Sorry.
I'm a little reluctant to do so, but I was named earlier and I believe incorrectly, and I would just like to correct the record if I may.
Okay, I'll allow you, if you could just hang fire for a sec.
Okay, it's not the most important thing that's being said today by an awful long way, but it was said with regard to commercial investments that this was something that the government encouraged. I do recall at Somerset West and Taunton that I proposed we reviewed. I questioned the investments many times, and at one point I said we should review what we were doing here, and that was at a time when we had very strong messages from government that they did not want us to do this, and in fact they threatened us if we continued. We were going to have access to the Public Works Loan Board removed. This was discussed at Somerset West and Taunton. To my regret, the council continued with the investments, which I think was wrong. If I may add very, very briefly, it's been a good debate, good points made. I do think a number of red herrings have been raised. The motion has been carefully worded and is worthy of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Deacon.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have to say I've gone from side to side through the debate, so I just thank all members for making such valid points, I think, on both sides. On balance, I'll be supporting the motion as is printed. I just wanted to pick up a couple of the points that I've heard made. Firstly, on employees who work for Elbit. I'm afraid if you don't know what your employer is doing, even if it's not in the office where you're based, then you should be more aware of the organisation that you're working for. So I don't quite, it's those individuals' choice to work for that organisation. I respect that that's their choice, but to claim that they're not therefore associated with the actions of the organisation they work for, I think is wrong. Actually, you should be aware of the actions that the organisation you're working for are taking. With regards to the moral and ethical considerations, of course, with any moral and ethical consideration, there's an element of judgment. There always has been and there always will be, because that's where those issues sit. They don't sit as black or white, they sit in that grey area, and different people sit in different places on the scale. But I think the way that the organisation reflects those morals and ethics is through the democratic process that we're all part of, actually. So we're elected to be here, to be a voice, to demonstrate our morals and ethics that we hold as individuals and as a collective. And over time and through society, that changes and that moves around. Of course it does. I don't think what the motion does prescripts us, actually, because by their very nature, morals and ethics move around, and our role as democratically elected members have an opportunity to have a voice in what we think they should be for our organisation. So I don't quite subscribe to that argument, I'm afraid. I think that picks up a larger point, though, about, from how I see it, I think for too long, our society has seen too many people willing to make money, regardless of the impact it has on our society at home or abroad. Actually, that's the fundamental point here. And we should be taking a stand as a council here, where we have a voice saying, actually, we don't want to look at making money in that way. We want to make sure that we are looking very, very carefully at the impact of the decisions we make, both here in Somerset and wider afield. And that's why I'll be supporting the motion.
Marcus Barr.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Deakin does make some valid points. I have swayed from side to side. But my question is, if this company was making drones or whatever it is for the British government, and we were using them against Ukraine or any other thing in the future, because we don't know what the future is going to be. But I think the world is on tenterhooks at the moment, and we might need this company in future to help us with conflicts that may come ahead of us. So my question is, if this company was making weapons for our UK government to use against, for our benefit, to defend this great country of ours, would we all be shouting and screaming and saying, no, 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 no? Now, the other point I want to make,
You let him speak, please.
The other point I want to make is Somerset Council actually own Jaguar Land Rover in Concord Way in Stockton-on-Tees. Now, if Just Stop Oil turned up and said, we want you to sell that because that's not morally right, would we be selling that building? And that's the question we have to ask.
Okay, Dave Wone.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to the debate around the room. There's some really good perspectives being discussed in this highly emotive discussion for this motion, but I propose that we either reword the motion or exclude the second part of the motion right here and now, or if we're unable to do that here and now, to defer the motion until discussions are exhausted with Elbit. It goes without saying that genocide and war crimes are abhorrent, and what is going on in Gaza must stop right now, and the perpetrators need to be brought to book. But Somerset Council needs to establish a legal basis on which to evict. Probable, in inverted commas, in respect of what may or may not go on inside 600 Aztec West is not a legal basis. And trying to evict on less than unimpeachable legal basis opens Somerset Council up to all manner of unintended consequences, not least legal and financial, by our open-ended challenge from Elbit and possibly the Israeli government and the security of jobs across Somerset. If we evict just because we don't like the tenant, this will open up a dangerous precedent for the financial and economic stability of Somerset Council for many years to come. So I'm not going to vote for the motion in its current format and would recommend either exclusion of the second part or an amendment to ensure
that we evict on 100% legal grounds.
Okay, I've got one more speaker, as in Habib. I'll take Habib and then we'll address other points. Oh, sorry, Bill.
I thought you were going to come back to me after the
Yeah.
Habib. Would that be okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do concur with Councillors Rigby and Carswell and happy to support the motion as it is. All human life is precious and should be protected from evil of war. Our rights, regardless of race, colour, religion, language and sex, have to be protected by all governments. Over 6 months has gone by since the tragedy on October 7th, and we have all witnessed a horrendous act of unequal massacre with more than 34,000 people dead, with the majority of them children and women, including under 80,000 people that have been wounded according to the health authorities in Gaza, the highest number in any global conflict in the last 30 years. Behind these figures are real people with hope for a better, more secure and prosperous future. There were clearly no plans to protect the civilians when Israel went into Gaza. On 9th of April this year, the Foreign Minister, David Cameron, stated that UK would not suspend arms to Israel in light of latest genocide in Gaza. We need the central government to commit to ending these arms licenses so that we are not complicit to this war crime. May I therefore request that Somerset Council, through the leader, writes to the government requesting that UK revokes export licenses to Israel to use in Gaza till peace prevails. We have to work towards peace and normalization of life in the holiest place on earth for the sake of humanity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll go back to Bill for a point of explanation, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to thank members, first of all, for the high quality of debate throughout. There have been some really interesting and thoughtful points raised, and I do appreciate members' contributions to our deliberations here. Just to address a couple of points that have been raised. It has been suggested that there is a mismatch between the first point about exploring all ways of legally evicting Elbit and the decisions made by the executive subcommittee last week. I don't see that contradiction myself. I see the decisions that were made by the executive subcommittee as one of the steps you would take in exploring whether there are legal ways to pursue the eviction routes. The advice we have at the moment is that that route is unlikely to be successful, or it would be at best dubious as to whether it would work. And that's where the potential risk of expense does come, which is why there is the otherwise seek to sell, because that is a potentially financially difficult route to take. So that word is explore. We are exploring whether that route is possible legally. And we need to give our officers time to take in the advice that has been submitted, to take into advice the opinion that Councillor Rigby referred to earlier, and just make sure that there are or are not legal grounds to pursue that. In terms of the second section, which is around the moral and ethical considerations, I would ask if the proposer and seconder would kindly consider Councillor Wakefield's alternative wording there, which I think does just help clarify that point. We do need, should we be in the position of making future commercial property investments for yield, we would want to make moral and ethical considerations as part of that decision-making process. I think the wording that she suggested, to ensure that moral and ethical considerations are properly considered in any future commercial property investments field clarify the point which I think the proposer and seconder are trying to make. Yes, there would need to be a further developed policy on that. Yes, there would need to be proper scrutiny of that policy. That's not the approach, the job for full council. That's the job for the appropriate scrutiny committee and for the executive subcommittee to then go into. To say that we should not make moral and ethical considerations in our decision making is incredibly troubling. For me, moral and ethical considerations should be first and foremost in the decisions that we take here at Somerset Council. I was thinking about whether it was necessary to add in the words from the recommendations from the executive subcommittee. I don't believe it necessarily is, because I believe that the word explore covers that, because those are actions that you would take if you were exploring the option of evicting Elbit. It is a course of action that I would prefer, but I do not believe that it may necessarily be the easiest process for us to go through. I remain absolutely determined that we will find a way that this council disassociates itself from this company and its sales of equipment that is facilitating the situation in Gaza as it stands at the moment. And I will continue to support the motion, but I would respectfully ask the proposer and seconder to take on board the amended wording.
There has been, I know Sarah earlier on with Dixie, I think you seconded a proposal, but I'd like to go back to the proposer of the motion to get his views on what's just been said. And I know you're considering it at the moment.
Chair, while they're considering their position, could I just ask for clarity over the proposed revised wording from the council
Right.
opposite, please?
Can we go back to Sarah, please?
Yes, sorry. When I was speaking here, I was just kind of making it up as I went along. I've got something slightly. I want to say this: to ensure that moral and ethical considerations are fully appraised in addition to financial advantage in any future commercial property investments for yield. Obviously, I think that's really important. I want to vote in favour of this, and if we change it in this way, I will be able to. I'm simply saying that I don't want us to be tied up in something that will cause problems in the future. Otherwise, I totally support what we're doing and what we're trying to do. So to ensure that moral and ethical considerations are fully appraised in addition to financial advantage in any future commercial property investments for yield. Basically, taking them into account is what we're saying.
Yeah.
You can say are fully taken into account if you prefer that, in addition to financial advantage.
Okay, that's fine. Can I go back over, please, to get a...
So I think people have quite missed the point, although Tom Deacon summed it up quite easily earlier on. We're not telling you how to think morally. We're asking that is what you do anyway. As part of your role as a councillor, you look at the morals and you make a judgment yourself. And therefore, I wouldn't want this to fall on that what I think is a slight difference. So we would accept those wording if that helps. Okay. But the key thing is this: the executive subcommittee is going through a process which is not in conflict with this motion. The first part, which looks at how to evict Elbit, obviously looks at how to do it through legal means and all that, and that shouldn't be contentious. And the final bit does mean, not as a councillor there said that business can do what they like, but that they're restrained by moral concerns, and that we make that judgment. But that's a factor in our judgment in future. That's all we're saying. We'll accept that, accept those words from over there, and I'd ask people to support this, please.
Okay, we now have the accepted wording added to the motion. Do you wish to say anything else before we move to the vote? Is everybody clear now on what we're voting for? Brian, can you sum it up, please?
That we're voting for the words as said in the motion that has been circulated, with the additional that I think Councillor Wakefield put in that separate phrase. What did you? Yeah, that bit that I haven't got it written down in full detail, but I'm sure.
Okay,
Can you say it, Sarah?
I think we can read the motion out from here. If I ask Scott to do that.
So the full motion is as written, apart from the second part or the second element, which is amended to now say, to ensure that moral and ethical considerations are fully appraised in addition to financial advantage in any future commercial property investments for yield.
Okay, those are the wordings. Is that okay with you, Shane, as well? Okay, that is the motion that's been put, and I now wish to go to the vote. So can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Any, oh, do you want to, any against? And are there any abstentions? So the motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have an adjournment now, so that members of the public that want to leave have, and I thank them for their attendance, and also a comfort break for our councillors. Thank you. I've got a couple of announcements, but first of all, the schedule of myself and the Vice Chairman's visits are in the document. If anybody wants to know any about it, please come and ask me or the Vice Chairman. Would be grateful to give you the information. Today, the Somerset Council's health team were here offering the blood tests, and hopefully a lot of people took the opportunity to find out how high their blood pressure was. You're shaking your head, David. Yes, no. This is a part of a wider campaign called Take the Pressure Off, and it's a collaborative initiative with the NHS Somerset, aiming to find people in Somerset that have a high blood pressure and aren't aware. 1 in 3 people in Somerset have high blood pressure and do not know they have it. And over 50% of heart attacks and strokes are caused by high blood pressure. This is a really important campaign, which the public health team would love you to support. You have a bag, which we're all given, with information about the campaign on your seat when you arrived. Please promote this work through your networks and let us know if we can help out on this situation at all. So thanks to them for coming today. I have my blood pressure taken. And amazingly, when I talked about today's meeting, the blood pressure went up. Okay, moving on from there, we have to reflect on 2 members of past councils that have passed away. The first is Ellen Woods. Ellen was born on the 2nd of April 1923, and she was over 100 years of age when she passed away on the 28th of December 2023. Ellen first stood for Watchet Urban District Council in a by-election in 1967 and was elected to the Urban District Council and then to Watchet Town Council and subsequently to West Somerset District Council. Ellen was the first lady chair for the West Somerset District Council and served in that role for 2 terms, as she did with Watchet Town Council. Ellen received the MBE for services to a community in December 1982 and made an honorary alderman for the district west of Somerset on the 15th of May 2002. The other member is Tony Bevan. Tony was born in December 1931 and passed away on the 6th of February 2024 at the age of 92 years. Tony was a Conservative Taunton Deane Borough Council from 2003 to 2007. He was elected along with Joanna Lewin Harris for Bishop's Lydeard. His son, who has joined us today on Teams, said he was passionate about his council work in Taunton met many people there and made many friends. Could we stand, please, for a moment of silence? Thank you. The flags at our offices were flown at half-mast today as a mark of respect. And I'd now like to open it up for any councillor that wish to add to the tributes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eileen Woods was a no-nonsense Midlander who served the community of Watchet and wider West Somerset for decades. I first served with her when I was elected to West Somerset in 1987, and she was immensely kind and encouraging not only to younger members but also to junior officers building their careers in local government. She liked to announce, and her voice could certainly carry, that I was her toy boy, which by the time she was 100 and I was 61 was increasingly unlikely if flattering. The reality, though, was that she was a deeply serious and effective advocate for her community and was not so much a politician as a stateswoman. She remained entirely interested and engaged pretty much to the end. As you say, she was made an honorary alderman of West Somerset in 2002, and had she lived a few weeks longer, she would have become an honorary alderman of this authority as well. Eileen Woods was much loved, admired and respected, and her vast experience will be truly missed.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to add to it either? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few words on Tony Bevan, much of which I gained from speaking and listening to his son. Tony, in his early years, joined the army, passed out through Sandhurst, and became an officer with Remy. He had several postings in Europe before going on to the Far East, where he spent much of his service and spent it with his first wife. There were more to follow. It is there in Singapore in his spare time that he took up broadcasting on local radio and recognised as an excellent raconteur, a lead into life as a politician later. Tony had many talents, an actor, an organiser, playing at the Singapore City Theatre. He was also a good musician, composed, and in his working life, with the engineering side of things, he loved finding neat engineering solutions. On leaving the service, he came back to this country, was involved in businesses successfully, before he eventually retired to the sunny climes of the foothills of the Quantocks. It was there as a district councillor for Bishop Stickgold that I first of all met him. And by this time, of course, he was already involved with the local theatre in Taunton and was part acting for TV productions as a fine, upstanding British gentleman. Tony was kind and considerate, thoughtful. He brought joy and a smile with him wherever he went. He was respected by those he helped out and all those that he met. Sadly, he's missed now, but leaves this world a better place for his having been here. Tony certainly lived a full and amazing life.
Thank you. Ross Henley.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say a few comments about Tony Bevan. Tony Bevan was a Conservative, not of the same party as I, but during my time as leader of the opposition of Taunton Deane Borough Council, I found him a very wise counsel. He never had any political side. Yes, he was a Conservative, but he had a really great sense of civic duty, and he did an awful lot for the area that he represented. and he helped out the council with a really deep, difficult, long-standing issue, shall I say, which I think he brought to a conclusion which had been rumbling on, causing problems for years. Tony did share with me some wonderful stories regarding his acting career and extra career. One of my favourites was the fact that he was a stormtrooper on one of the original Star Wars films. And he told me the story. He said he was in the queue, as they do outside, where they're waiting for the food van and everything, and they got their helmets off. And one of them turned around and said to Tony, "My God, this is absolute rubbish and tripe we're working on this time. This is actually going to bomb, isn't it?" Can you believe Alec Guinness is actually taking a percentage of this movie? I'm not taking a wage. He's done his money. Of course, none of them realised what they were actually working on. It was so fantastic. And he also told me a wonderful story about when he was actually sat next to Uma Thurman in makeup, which I won't repeat this evening, but this afternoon. But it was very, very funny. A lovely guy. And I last bumped into him when I took my father into Musgrove during COVID. I bumped into him in the lift, and we had a nice little catch up then. He was a really nice guy, and I really enjoyed my time with him on the council. I know lots of other people did, and he did an awful lot for the community he represented.
Thank you, Ross. I think that's all the hands, so we would now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is report of the leader and executive, comes under, and legislation, and this is the medium-term financial strategy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm really glad this afternoon to hear councillors leading really long and full lives. And I'm also really glad they did the blood pressure monitoring today, not in February at full council when we set the budget, because I would not have got green in February. So this paper was considered and endorsed at the executive meeting earlier this month. It is unusual for a medium-term financial strategy to be brought forward to full council this early in the financial year, but these are unusual times in Somerset and in other council areas across the country. It is essential that we keep up the pace in order to avoid a Section 114 notice. So as an administration, we have many concerns at this time early in the new financial year. We do not yet have the outturn for 23-24, and we realise that there is a mighty task ahead to both prepare the outturn paper and then the statement of accounts for this first year of Somerset Council, and indeed the first year on Microsoft Dynamics. We need to pay particular attention to our ability to deliver the savings in the current year's budget, or find other savings to replace any that cannot be achieved. Dedicated schools grant with the accumulated deficit in the high needs block is a huge concern, as it is with most upper tier councils. We must understand the pace of the wider and deeper transformation of the new council that has superseded the One Somerset business case. And of course, inflation and interest rates will be critical factors, as will global and national factors, including the date of the next general election. It's worth pointing out, Chair, that now we show the government grants on a line-by-line basis on the income side of our budget. We need to be aware that if we wish to use percentages of budget for areas of expenditure, for instance, for social care, we need to be sure we use formats that allow comparison with previous years. The County Council network, which includes many unitary councils, despite its name, quotes 2/3 of the council's expenditure being on adults and children's services. That is at least the case in Somerset. So we need residents and parish, town and city councils to understand that scale of expenditure in each settlement in our county. We must better understand that the majority of our expenditure is spent on Somerset's people. It is not a separate cohort of residents who need the services of this council. So as an example, in a settlement with a population of 10,000, on average, and these are average and therefore approximate figures, Somerset Council will spend £6.6 million this year on services for adults and children. That's a settlement of 10,000 residents of all ages. And we know that those figures grow every year. In a settlement of just 1,000 residents, which would obviously be a village, that figure would be, on average, £661,000 per annum. In a settlement of 50,000, so a good sized town in Somerset, the figure would be well, it will be, it's not would be, it will be, because we're in the year now, as an average, just over £33 million per year, every year, and growing. So I undertake to explore further examples of average annual expenditure across the county of Somerset in order to give residents and businesses more information on how this council spends the council tax they pay. As well as that work, we should look back at some of the workload of the last year, at Audit Committee's huge achievement in approving 10 sets of accounts, with the final set of accounts delegated to the Chair and the 151 officer to approve. Our request for capitalisation direction, with understanding that the government timeframe does not match the timeframe of a council's budget setting, which you may recall that from February, we are still waiting for government's confirmation for the current financial year 24-25. Our Section 151 Officers Appendix 5 on this paper, called Section 151 Assessment of Current Financial Position, is critically important to the future of this council. How that opinion is reviewed and updated as we move through the coming months will give us assurance or not. I wish to extend my thanks to all the finance team who have moved from budget setting to these papers for the medium-term financial strategy in a very short timescale. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. We move now to the leader who is seconding the proposal.
Confirm I'm happy to second and reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I would open it up now to all members. Anyone wish to comment? Steve Mansell.
Thank you for the report, which I have read with interest, and do appreciate the difficulties it is trying to address. Firstly, I think there may be a mistake, or I'm misunderstanding it. On the version of the papers that I've got, 2.1, the first paragraph, it refers to the HRA. I think it's actually meaning to refer to the medium-term financial strategy, and something inadvertent has crept in, or maybe I'm misdoing it. But we did the HRA last time, I think.
Can you clarify, please?
In an earlier version, there was an incorrect title, which has now been changed. So apologies, you're right. There was an incorrect title on one of the headings in an earlier version. So it's certainly not the HRA. That dates from February's budget setting.
Okay, if you want to continue.
If I may, thank you. Yeah, I thought that must be the case, but thank you. So yes, what I would also like to say on what is the substance of the paper, which is asking full council to approve the medium-term financial strategy. As I've said before, and I'm not going to go into any detail now, I do have concerns about the transformation programme and where we may end up. To me, it looks like we're on an uncertain path with that. I do accept that there's not much option, but I would like clearer involvement, I guess, of members and where this goes. I do note that this strategy has not been considered by a scrutiny committee. I note that the risk of 114 is still very high. as I say, I accept there's not a good way forward and a way forward has to be found. I do have some doubts about sort of giving permission, as it seems, to do all necessary actions to avoid a 114, but while also accepting, as I say, that there isn't a good way forward. But I just wish to make those observations, partly to explain how I may vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Hewson.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to the finance team and formally record my thanks for the work that they've put in this year on the statements of accounts and the various audits that we've been through. I know members will be bored of me saying this, but literally the team has been ground into the dust by, in fact, I don't think Jason's here today, so hopefully we've not ground him too far into the dust. It has been an exceptional amount of work for the finance team to get through, and I would like to formally record my thanks to both Jason and Nikki Hicks and all of the team that work with them.
Mandy Chilcott.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'd echo those thanks to the finance team, and I think the past years will never to be repeated with the amount and the number of accounts that have come through. And I think it's a real accolade, actually, that so many of our accounts have been signed off. So we stand out amongst a small number of councils that are in that position. And that's really important because we need that to come into the new council so we can set our baselines. So that's the good news. I suppose the bad news is my blood pressure certainly hasn't dropped, and when I read the paper and the actions that are in place, I still have no assurance. So I have a couple of questions, please. The first one, the statement on page 41 of the report states that this council is operating as if a 114 is in place, and we've heard that sort of fairly consistently for the last few months. So just some clarification, please. Later in the paper on page 103, it outlines the process of 114. And it says under a 114, there would be a prohibition on all new agreements and that all non-statutory expenditure would be cut. So my first question is, can you confirm that this council has a prohibition on all new agreements and that all non-statutory expenditure has been cut if in fact we are following the process of a 114? Thank you. That's the first question.
Liz, did you want to reply?
Yeah, you'll notice, Chair, there's nobody sat behind me today, but we do have a chief executive in the room, and it is a fair point that a real section 114 notice would be different. And certainly the leader of council discussing with other leaders of councils that do have a section 114 would be able to tell us that it is indeed even less pleasant, more difficult. We do have the section 151 officer joining us remotely, and it may well be helpful, Chair, if we could bring him in or the chief executive to explain where we are able to operate as if we have a 114 and where we don't.
Jason from a desert island somewhere.
Good afternoon, councillors. Apologies. I've done something to my back and can't drive, so apologies for not being there in person today. In terms of issuing a section 114, it's actually for a very short period the 114 is in place. So it is that period where I make the judgment that the council is about to run out of money and not able to balance its books and live within its means, as it were. And you issue the section 114 notice. That puts an immediate stop on any non-essential spend or entering into any new contracts that aren't statutorily required. That's only for a period until full council meets, which must be within 21 days. So that's what the section appendix 5 paper is referring to, that process between issuing the 114 and full council meeting to consider the issue, then agree an action plan. In terms of the things that are in place as set out in the paper, there are 3 control boards in place. They have been in place for a number of months to limit our spend. We are still spending money on discretionary items. So hopefully that's a helpful clarification in terms of how that section 114 part works.
Mandy.
Thank you. I'm just really keen that we're very clear with our electorate in that we are not fully operating as if we had a 114 in place. I keep hearing it, but when you actually hear of the process that we go through, or you could go through if we're faced with that, we have not fully followed that process. So I just wanted to make that very clear for everybody in the room. So my next question is, the papers present a plan that includes cuts, massive reductions in services and staff numbers, combined with large increases in council tax, as well as increased fees and charges, all of which will impact the residents of Somerset. But given all of that, the lower end of what can be achieved within this plan is a reduction in that budget of 47 million. That's in the papers, against a predicted budget gap of 103 million, which is also in the papers. And that's if all of that lower estimated figure is there and achievable and delivered. So in the event that the 103 million is not found, what happens next with regards to this plan? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Back to Liz.
Thank you. I'd just like to make the first point that council tax has gone up by the maximum allowed up to the cap, as it did for the last few years under the previous administration. So going up by the maximum allowed by government without a referendum is not new for this year. It's not new from last year. It's not new from the previous few years before that. It is a huge gap, absolutely massive gap. I don't think anyone would deny that. Anybody working for the council who comes up against the control boards, from what I hear from them, they find it as if we had a section 114 notice in place. So there is concern from people about how difficult it is to get expenditure through the control boards. There's concern about loss of interim positions, where we may actually have people acting as interim who are essential to the running of the council. So all of those things have to be considered. We are using one-off resources in this year to set this budget, and for me, that is top of the risk table in this year, because using reserves, everyone knows you only do it once. Using a capitalisation direction, if we're able to avoid additional borrowing, that's good, because that additional borrow is PWLB rate plus 1%, but it does require us to sell assets, and that is the council's property assets, land and property, and also commercial investments. So we've discussed commercial investment, one of them, at length this afternoon. Those commercial investments were purchased to be a long-term investment. We're now looking to sell them at a time when the market is deflated, and I don't think anybody would want to do that. There may be the one asset where we wish to take one, possibly two, where we would wish to take action. The rest, I think, those people, particularly those who were in the 4 district councils, because they all invested in commercial property for yield, I think all of those councillors who took those decisions would much rather that those investments remained as long-term investments. However, we are in this position. We have rehearsed endlessly about the low council tax base, the low council tax rate, because of historic decisions where it was set low in 1993, and we had 6 years of council tax freeze where councils like Dorset did not. And we are now in a position that builds on the unhappiness that we saw in 2017-18, when this council was also in a very difficult financial position. And those of us who were county councillors at the time will remember it well. I actually think it's of some benefit to me as a lead member that I was here and saw that. Those of us who were also district councillors are probably really missing the ability we had as district councillors to agree more services and more projects for the good of the people of Somerset. However, my colleague, Councillor Ros Wyke, has her paper later in this agenda. And if anyone hasn't read it, they should read it, because that is how we are delivering priorities in Somerset. And that through economic development, that is how we can create a better future for people of Somerset, particularly young people, where we need to keep them in our county and not continue to be, it's a bit of a unpleasant phrase, but a net exporter of young people, which Somerset has been for a long time. I cannot remember how many years in my job I sat saying one of the problems for Somerset is a lack of employment opportunities, a lack of a university in Somerset. We need to take actions to put that right and to make the change. It is going to be incredibly demanding. Nobody presumes that we can get through this situation this year without a Section 114 notice, and that is why our Section 151 officer will be reporting regularly to the executive, to which all members are invited, on the status of the council as we go through the months this summer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mandy, back to you.
Thank you. I'll probably ask the question again, actually, because I heard all of that. I wasn't sure I heard a response. So the lower amount in this paper that we got before us today talks about 47 million achievable. That's the lower end. We've got a budget gap of 103 million. What happens if that 103 million isn't found? What happens next? I'm really concerned that there's some plans here that have a huge differential in the figures that you're hoping to achieve savings wise. What I'm not seeing anywhere is, in the event that that doesn't happen, the higher end of those figures is not achieved, what happens next for this council? I suppose I'm looking for a plan B.
Liz.
I'll be really interested to see whether the chief executive or the 151 officer comes in at this stage. I think we have a plan. I think it is a plan A. My concern is that a plan B would lie with government commissioners, and that is where we do not want to go. We don't want to pay good money to government commissioners to come in and take those decisions. So I'm very open to any answer from the 151 officer, or indeed from the chief executive.
Can I pass over to the chief executive, please?
Thank you, and I'll ask Jason to come in after me as well. But the basic answer is, if we don't hit the plan and we can't set a balanced budget, then as soon as that becomes apparent, we're issuing a Section 114. At which point, as Councillor Relations just said, the government will eventually, after a period of time, appoint commissioners. The commissioners will arrive and try and see if they can work with us to find better plans that will find bigger savings and will close the gap. That is Plan B. The 114 is purely an alarm system to say to councillors, we are running out of money, we need a better plan. So the comment about, we have we issued Section 114? No, obviously not. The reason we say as if we'd issued a Section 114, we're trying to deliver against a plan. This is one of the plans you're seeing that effectively assumes we had. So the commissioners will arrive. The only thing at this point in time we know commissioners potentially bring with them that we don't have as an organisation is potentially the ability to get the Secretary of State to allow us to increase council tax above any cap. And that's not guaranteed. That will persist past the current government. Depending, it doesn't matter which government comes in next. That's something the current Secretary of State has chosen to do. There's no guarantee if future Secretary of State will do so. So, we are very much on our own in terms of we have to work out how we are going to fix this. And the commissioners will basically come in to try and push us harder to make us fix it quicker. And if it's not fixable, then that's when we have to start talking to government more about council tax and so on. But I don't know if Section 151 also would like to add anything, Chair.
Jason?
Yeah, if I just quickly add a couple of things. So the table in the report sets out a range of options. £47 million is the lower end of the range. The top end of the range is 116 million. The other part I draw members' attention to is the table on reserves on page 62, where it sets out the council's reserves position, and you'll see they're forecast to be at the end of March 25 to be just under £105 million. So they will be taken into account. If we're short on the target, then you look at your once-off sources of funding, such as reserves. Clearly, if they aren't sufficient, which there is a danger of, then you would have to issue a section 114 and do as the chief exec said. We would expect commissioners to come in at a point in time.
Thank you for indulgence. I think there's just a huge spread there. That of itself is a huge risk to the council, which is what I felt I needed to highlight today. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mandy. I can't see other hands, so it's back to you, Bill.
Nothing further to add.
Okay, finally back to Liz, just to sum up if you need to make any other further comments.
I will sum up, Chair, by saying it is going to be incredibly difficult this year ahead. It's easy for me to sit here and make a bit of a joke about blood pressure. It is a really big pressure on this administration. We all care about this council. There was the move to go to one council at this particular time. I do not believe that anyone forecast what happened with inflation, what happened with interest rates that has affected the financial future of this council. I don't think anybody considered that back in 18, 19 and 20 when the plans started to come together for a move to either 1 or 2 unitaries. I don't believe any of the councils saw what was coming, and I don't think councils did across the whole country. So it is going to be incredibly difficult. The only thing we can promise, Chair, is that we work as hard as we possibly can with our officers to make sure we explore every opportunity while we continue to take care of those people who most need our support. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation has been put on the 4 bullet points in your schedule. Can I have a show of hands, please? Those all in favour? Sorry? Yeah, okay. And those against? And those abstentions? Okay, the matter is carried. Thank you very much. We move on to item 7, which is the report of the Chief Executive, and I hand over to the Chief Executive.
I have nothing to add to the report, Chair. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Okay, the proposal's being proposed by Sarah. Would you like to speak to it?
Not really. I think this is an interim appointment, and it's just something we need to do to make sure that the appointment is properly comes within the way the council works.
But you are happy to propose it?
I'm happy to propose it, yeah.
And the seconder is Sue Osborne, I've got on the list. Are you happy to second?
Yes, I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Unless there's any questions, could I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Are there any against? And any abstentions? So that is carried. We move on to item 8, which is report of the monitoring officer, and I pass over to Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And again, in terms of the report as published, council will note 2 decisions taken by the Chief Executive in relation to granting dispensations to councillors Kay and Keach.
Okay, are there any questions? Yes, Dave Mansell.
Sorry, I've not quite got myself together with this one, but the report is absolutely fine. And thank you very much for the dispensation offered. I did just unfortunately feel I should let people know, and there's no problem with voting for this and noting it as we should. But the version of the report for Councillor Kay is not actually the final version that the decision was taken on. It's not significantly different, but it was slightly different, the final version, but I don't, I just wished that to be known, that the version published on the website and which was signed off was slightly different, but we can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take that away just to double check. Yes, David.
I think these dispensations of 6 months are vitally important to people when they come into quite a vulnerable position. So I do welcome the opportunity that we use them and that we tend to stick together on them and see the opportunity for create that space for people. I'd just like to send my best wishes to both councillors and hope that they return to us very soon and they get better for whatever's they're in trouble in them at the moment.
Thank you, David. Adam.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what David said and wish both councillors all the best. And it's also nice to see Councillor Keach online. I've seen she's been sat through the meeting, so I'd just like to wish her well as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other hands, so we're asked to note the report. So moving on to item 10, which is report of the leader and executive, and I'd invite Bill Revins to speak to it, please.
Mr. Chair, can I just draw your attention that there was a hand up online? Is that been noted? That's not appropriate. Sorry. Just to formally introduce the report as written and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the leader? If not, we'd move on to 10.1, which is the annual report of the lead member for economic development, planning and assets, and Ros. Oh, David, sorry. Oh, of course, yeah, we go down the line. Can we take that report, then I'll do it.
What do you like, Chair?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to remind people, each of the executives do an annual report, and this is the one for economic development, planning and assets. It's 30 odd pages, and my apologies for that. But on the other hand, it is fairly comprehensive and gives you all a feel as to what goes on within the council. I'm not going to particularly highlight great detail of this. I'm sure I'm more than happy to answer questions, but I just really wanted to remind people of some of the things it covers. There are a large number of officers in the council who do things, and we inadvertently either are not aware of, or we just assume, take for granted, or sometimes just not think about it. But one way or the other, there are people here in the council who every single day open and lock up 150 buildings, keep the maintenance of the building, the heating, the lighting, the security going. It sounds, you know, minimal, but has a huge impact. Equally, you've got within the report successful building control individuals who have gone out and quite rapidly trained on a huge number of new legislation coming through. They're now in a market leader position, and they're hoping to, because it is run as a commercial service, probably make an extra 100,000 plus a year for the council, because they're now in a position to provide that skill and expertise to our community. There are individuals who are coping with immense pressures, and I think of our planning departments across the whole of the council. Individual planners who take pride in professionalism, in coping with planning applications where you've got phosphates, where you've got BNG, complicated legislation, and often considerable pressure from developers, members, and also the community. And we should be grateful that we have these people dedicated to do such things. I could touch on the individuals who administer the most incredibly complicated grants. We were very fortunate. We've acquired grants from all sorts of sources nationally, but they do have some rules, regulations, and need for guidance to people who want to apply for them. Whether it's a local community group trying to get a rural prosperity fund grant, or whether it's a group looking at finance and trying to get some support with the UK Prosperity Fund. There are things there which we just take for granted, but behind the scenes, they are providing our community with support to make the very most of the monies available. There are also individuals who have coped with the wide range of issues. Transferring an asset is not just from A to B. It's amazing the amount of work and effort required to understand and support the very complicated legal process, the process of renegotiating leases, and all the other things associated for those of you who have got that sort of property. And alongside all of that, we've got a considerable amount of business as usual. And I would just touch on one particular group. We are going to be selling in the next year with the support of the legal team, the assets team, a considerable amount of assets, not just our commercial assets, but also the ones within our ownership at the moment. And alongside that will inevitably be the business as usual with these assets. And we're going to fill that gap, which so rightly was identified earlier. So within this report, do take and appreciate the fact that we have some very dedicated, hardworking staff who are delivering for people of Somerset. And so do find some time to read it and appreciate what we are doing and are achieving. And the final thing I would say is that we've got 100+ million of hard-earned regeneration monies from a range of sources. People here from Chard would know just what the difference has made to the community of Chard over the last 2 years. And we're now doing the same in Yeovil, in Glastonbury, in Bridgewater, in Taunton, and all those individual officers who are putting effort to make sure we get the very best out of every single penny of money from our grants needs to be remembered. And I would just like to say on behalf, I hope, of all of you, a real thank you to the staff who have achieved so much. And I hope you'll see that in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marcus Barr.
Thank you, Chair. Just have one question really. Somerset Council is set to lose £7 million on a building a predecessor district council purchased in 2021. Former Somerset West and Taunton Council bought the Steelite International Limited building in Stoke-on-Trent for £21 million 3 years ago. Now the building is being put up for sale for £14 million with a £7 million loss, less than what the former council paid in 2021. My question is, has anyone been sacked? And because if this was a private company, somebody would be sacked. So I'd like to know why somebody hasn't been sacked. Thank you.
Back to you, Ros.
I think the context, and I come from years and years in private company and private companies, and so I understand what you're saying. The reality is that a lot of the council business is predetermined by central government, and central government made it absolutely clear that local authorities, the district councils, was talked and given a lead on raising monies and at a very advantageous rate to buy commercial property. And I think that right across the country, we have done so. Now we're in a situation, the government has been very clear, the same government who encouraged us is now saying very clearly that local councils should divest of their commercial assets. And I can't control the market any more than you can. And we're in a situation where, courtesy of that short-lived government, our commercial market has, or short-lived Prime Minister, the commercial market has gone very flat. And we're now having to sell into that. So yes, we will be seeing sales at far from ideal prices. But you tell me what we can do at the moment, given the very clear direction from government.
Martin Well.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a question and a comment about the role which I serve on of the Strategic Planning Committee. I've been on this since the County Council days and now. And at one time we dealt with mainly footpaths rights and mineral rights. And the mineral rights have now passed to the area planning committees, I believe. And frankly, the the strategic planning committee, in my view, doesn't actually do anything strategic. And the main strategic purpose of the council in planning terms at the moment is obviously the local plan, the new local plan, and the old local plan is being taken into that. Now, am I right in thinking that the work on that is being through another committee or a subcommittee, and in fact the strategic planning committee won't be dealing with that, which seems to be a mistake in my view. You have a set up committee of experienced planning councillors, and all they're going to do, frankly, at the moment, is deal with historic rights of way. And I'd just like to feel that if I'm going to attend, and I'm sure other members of that committee would like to feel, that we actually would have taken part in a strategic view of the work of this council. Thank you.
The Strategic Planning Committee does 4 or 5 things. I'm sorry if you don't recognise them. One is, you're absolutely right, the rights of way. Secondly, on a quarterly basis, you look at the performance of each of the individual 4 planning committees, and you have a ability and instruction in terms of seeing whether they're performing, whether you want focus and attention. So there is an oversight role there. The third thing is that all nutrient schemes go to this committee and are approved by this committee. And these nutrient schemes, when they get running, and some of them already are up and running, and the committee has already seen some, will actually unlock some of the most precious housing we've been waiting for a long time. So again, it's really critical. There are other activities, I think, of Village Green and also neighbourhood plan meetings and neighbourhood plans, etc. There is a full range of activity, and I'm more than happy to take it outside and give you the list of the terms of reference of that committee. So it is really important, and that's for minerals. The minerals at the moment applications, and most of them actually refer to Mendip, but the minerals go first of all to the old district council areas for consideration, and then if the determination is different from the officer's recommendation, will then come to the strategic committee. So it's 2 tranches, and I believe if you look at the proposal, which will go to full council, that the all minerals will now go to the strategic committee, although there is considerable opposition from individuals within the former Mendip.
Thank you, Chair. Can I have any conversation, please, on the new plan? Because I'm unclear how that is going to be dealt with by councillors when over the years as it comes to fruition.
There is, for the new local plan, and we have until 2028 to deliver. And as you know, if you've been involved in local plans, they take a lot of making. At the moment, there is the data collection process going ahead, quite considerable amount of data collection. This will be followed with workshops with members, and also with the strategic planning committee. We'll be getting reports and updates on it. The process will ensure, as you know, a number of statutory consultations with the public, and also eventually a statutory review by a planning inspector before it goes to the council for approval. So there are going to be many occasions, both individually and collectively, where members will be involved, and indeed the public generally, when making of the local plan.
Lee Redman.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by thanking Councillor White for her report. and the in-depth nature of it. It is really interesting to see some of the great work that's going on. My first comment is point is a comment in relation to the gravity development and the work that your officers have been doing to bring that forward. It needs to be commended, and I look forward to as it grows and brings more stability. My next point is in relation to Hinkley C, and particularly the workforce negotiations that are currently taking place. Do you know where I'm going with this? But I'll be very quick. It's just that it's frustrating that with the original DCO, the Development Consent Order, there were some consequences for overrunning of of their workforce numbers, which brought around a very quick renegotiation of the numbers previously. The consequences change a little bit to the point now where I believe that the agreed number is around 8,600. And to the best of my knowledge, it depends who you talk to, but there's over 11,000 people already on the site at the moment. And forgive me, I am in correspondence with the Executive Director in relation to this, but it's an important point to make out loud. There's no real rush to get any further negotiations. My concern is if it carries on waiting any longer than this, by the time we get to agreeing some figures, they'll be on the way down and it will be nearly finished. The thing is that within the large areas of our county, there are massive impacts for the workers' staff. Just to be clear, there are massive benefits for the county as well, of which I will always be clear on. But the consequential impact, particularly in the area where I represent Bridgwater, housing has become a lottery or a lucky stop. And the rented accommodation is a auction if it actually makes it out into the public. So my question, please, is can we please start holding EDFE's feet to the fire and try and get something done? And when we do negotiate this next workforce uplift, can we ensure that there's some consequences included in it? Because otherwise, we know that they've been over the numbers for months and months and months and months and months, and there's still no rush. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. I totally share and understand your frustration. I think your figure of over 11 is probably optimistic. I suspect it is going to move, and certainly the numbers they have shared with us will go higher. We have already more than once written to EDF to speed things up. It is all wound up with the revisions of the DCO, which is unusual. It's the first time really in the country, because they've taken so long to build Hinkley C, we now need to have some revisions to the original DCO order, and that is inevitably going to have impacts. I'm more than happy to share with you, but I would agree with you. With one exception. I don't think we should put Hinkley EDF's feet to the fire. I think we should increase the heat to the fire. We are already making it very clear, both in writing and in meetings, that this is not acceptable, because it does have an impact not only on housing in Bridgwater, but the larger piece. And we need to get this resolved, because we're very conscious that down the road, we'll begin to see some impact with gravity as and when that builds up. So we need to get it resolved. And one of the problems is, and it's very different to say Sizewell C in the east of the country, is that Hinkley and EDF are a commercial company, and therefore we don't have the same advantages, because Sizewell C is being funded by the UK government. And therefore you have a very different dynamic and the ability to actually alter things. And as I said, the DCO it's quite old and it's being revised at the moment, and that is masking, I think, a lot of activity. And I totally understand your frustration and share it, but I can assure you we're trying as fast and as quickly as we can to get them to come to the table and agree, but we don't have an awful lot of levers in comparison to some situations.
Dave Mansell.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. And I do agree with the comments made about the hard work officers are doing and the good and important projects, etc., that are being progressed. There is good evidence of that. I've got a question in relation to it's the energy purchasing, which is 4.69. So I did have the page number. I haven't got it in front of me now, but 4.69 in the report. My question is in relation to something that comes from the climate emergency strategy, which committed the authority to switching to a 100% renewable energy tariff. And I believe that did happen, but I noticed the wording in the report didn't match that. So could I ask, are you able to say today, if you have that in front of you, what is the situation on the renewable energy tariff? Is that in place? Is it something that's planned? And if it needs a written answer, that's fine. But I would be interested to know some details. You know, what is the tariff as well? What does it involve? Thank you.
Thank you. I would suggest I give you a fulsome written answer. We do put quite an emphasis on decarbonising buildings, and we're in the bidding process again to try and decarbonise another building, which will again help with the energy. But in terms of the tariff, in all its detail, I'll come back to you.
Norman Cavell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like some clarity on an issue. I remember as a district councillor at Somerset West and Taunton that when we were looking to invest to make income on property, the government issued clear instructions that we were not to use Public Works Loan Board at an advantageous rate against private enterprise to invest for income. Furthermore, when councils continued to do so, they actually issued an edict that those councils that did so would actually lose the right to borrow at Public Works loan rate for investment for local use, like our housing, etc., and therefore would be at a disadvantage. I don't call this incentivizing us to use Public Works Loan Board money for investment, rather the opposite. So is that the case?
Liz, did you want to come back?
I don't know if Jason Vaughan's still with us, but there was the early days of investment in commercial investments, which started in 2016, if I remember rightly, at Mendip District Council, was the first of the districts, and PWLB borrowing was available then. The government changed it later. And so councils that had used, for instance, internal borrowing in order to purchase were then restricted in what they could use PWLB borrowing for at a later stage. I think when people look back on this in 10 years' time, or maybe even just 5 years' time, they'll see a number of actions that were taken that actually have impacted on the financial security of councils. One of them for me is the loss of the Audit Commission. I suspect if the Audit Commission was not lost, things would have looked different. And then with the reduction in the revenue support grant, particularly, councils did indeed invest for yield so that they could support their services that way. There was a time, quite a long time actually, when interest rates were at historical lows. So some of the districts, one particularly, I know from Mendip, my time at Mendip, that long-term borrowing was taken out at very low figures. The county council continued with internal borrowing rather than externalising at low rates. I think there will be people writing essays and indeed books on how things have turned out for local authority. The Audit Commission, government actions, borrowing, interest rates, all the rest of it, they will all be in there, and they are all impacting on this council along with unitarisation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mandy Chilcott, just to remind you, this is questions for Ros.
Just thank you, and I refer to the report. So first of all, I think there's much to celebrate here, and also to the bulk of this work has been a number of years in bringing it together, and I suppose it's thanks going out to those districts and the former county council that started a lot of these projects, and there's been some really good money that's been pulled into Somerset. So I think it's great to take a moment to celebrate, and also particularly a small item actually within the report, but that's the Screens Somerset. You know, we've now got a web page dedicated to films and productions coming to Somerset. I think Somerset is a fantastic location to come film in. We've seen some good productions recently, and I'd really love to see us all sharing pictures and experiences in Somerset in all that we do every day to extol its virtues. I think we've all got a part to play in that. Just moving on and touching on the HPC workforce, I think there is a conversation to be had, and certainly in the very early days, way ahead of any building starting, there was a considerable amount of mapping and planning into workforce, where they would go, how they would stay. I think it would be really valuable to look at that initial work and see how much it differs, because I think what we see now is totally different to what was planned, and I think that would be useful to do as a learn. My questions really are around, we've heard that there are a lot of properties that are going to be disposed of. We all understand that. My concerns are around capacity within the assets team and legal. Is there the capacity? Are we buying in capacity? I know it was stretched before we started this work, so I don't know where it's at now. And just finally, I think myself and Councillor Hadley would really welcome a meeting with you, Ros, because I have some real concerns about some of the processes that are going alongside some of these sales, and I think it is in part due to the speed that we are trying to work at, but I'm just really keen that even though you're working at speed, things are still done in the right way. So I would open that invitation to you if that's possible for Andy and myself.
First of all, for those who can recall, before we went to vesting day, the one strategy we got in place was asset disposal. No longer is it a single member decision. We put together a governance which is very clear about who makes the decision, what are the criteria we meet, and that is now moved forward into an executive subcommittee, which is a public meeting as well, so that there is considerable governance. So I think it's a little unfair to characterise it as things which are really concerning, because we've moved from a very opaque system to a very transparent one. And I feel that, yes, I'm sure we can improve further, but it is a very open system about it. I mean, in terms of capacity, yes, you're right, the department is under pressure because we're also involved in devolution and also a number of other day-to-day business as usual activity. We have taken out a contract with a specialist legal firm to deal with some of the larger disposals so that we get it right. And we also are using an external agent as well, again, through the procurement process to support the disposal of the major commercial assets. But on the ground, an awful lot of it is down to Somerset Council officers talking to both individuals, groups, parishes, towns, and getting it right. And we will try to do it as rapidly as we can. I know there's great expectation around devolution, but we do need to adhere to the policies which are in place, the procedures, and make sure that everybody is aware of it right across the county, so that wherever we are, each of the individual services have an opportunity to look at an asset before we say it is suitable for disposal, to make sure that we don't dispose of an asset which could have actually helped out another particular service. So there is quite a lot of structure, and I think good governance overseen by both the executive subcommittee and democratic services.
Thank you. I'm really fully aware of the policy. I've read it end to end, but I would still welcome a conversation with you. Thank you.
Henry Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would like just to remind Councillor Wyke that at the Constitution Governance Committee, it was agreed that the Strategic Planning Committee is reviewing its work with the rights of way, and in July that is being actually looked at. Thank you.
Henry, you're absolutely right. I'm talking about the as here and now with the question I had on the strategic committee. Going forward, we inevitably will be tweaking and we'll continue to tweak the processes to get them as effective as possible.
Thank you. Right, Andy Dingwall.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to pick up on that strategic planning committee meeting. I've done a little digging on the website, and since vesting day, there's been 13 meetings scheduled and 9 cancelled. So is part of that tweaking going to be adjusting the scope of the meeting to become more effective?
I believe Democratic Services put in a number of meetings throughout the year, and then they are dependent on what comes to it. If you think about, we have, I don't know, I can't remember the figure. I want to say 6,000, but I may have got it wrong. But the number of potential planning applications which could go to the strategic committee, many of them don't need to in the end. But the point being is that we have availability, a slot in the diary, and that is the case. Inevitably, you know, rights of way challenges and all the other things do vary as do mineral applications.
Rosemary Woods.
Now, can you, oh, you can. Thank you, Chair. It's quite simple. I hear one thing when we're talking about disposing of buildings. I hear that with West Somerset, we have West Somerset House. It is greatly underused at the moment. And so I welcome the fact that it's going to be more used, going to be diversified. But I hear from one sector that, of course, it's being consultation has gone on all the way through. I hear from my parishes, we haven't heard anything about it. Now, if we are going to do these plans, if we are going to dispose of buildings, please talk to the parishes, talk to me even in my parish. You know, I can pass it on, but I can't if I'm told on one hand, oh, they've all been consulted, on the other, they haven't. Can you clarify what is correct?
On the office rationalisation, you're absolutely right. West Somerset House is being made more versatile in terms of some building work, and will take a range of offices and services and facilities in there, including a meeting area. The process started probably early last year, where both the town councils and I think emails went to the parishes, but most of them weren't that interested around, plus all the local members to talk about the process. I do think that, and I'll put up my hand to this, that there could have been and should have been a bit more consultation at the very end. But the underlying process has been shared. It was shared with staff, it was shared with unions last summer, and the whole process is has been consulted, but probably not as fulsomely as we could have done. And my apologies for that.
I'm sorry, if this process is at the end, my elderly people that I'm told that a lot of people in my area are over 80. I got told that at Adults and Health, won't be able to actually speak with a person. They'll be expected to do it online, and they can't do that. But I was promised right at the beginning that we'd have that opportunity to have reception there that will be able to answer their questions or pass it on to an officer who could. But it doesn't seem that that's the case. This is what's happening at the grassroots. The actual thing is falling down.
Okay, the customer service proposals about how the service of talking to people directly, I think I need to hand over to my colleague. What we're doing in all the offices where we're rationalising is making sure that our reception desks and our ability for members of the public where it's appropriate to come into the building. But how the customer service runs is really up to the model which I think communities would like to run. But as with many things in assets, we are sometimes the facilitator and we provide space, and then it's up to the individual services to use the space as they wish. And I think that is the case. And I don't know whether you would like to talk about customer services.
Rosemary, I'll get you a written response in relation to West Somerset House so that you can go through it. Or I can go through it with you, so we can outline what is going to take place in relation to customer services there. But we can also get yourself a review of also VAL, which is our in-house library service, the virtual assistant learning, which I know that we did in Minehead Library. So you can also find out a bit more about that as well, because we've got lots of different ways that you can interact with the customer service team, both in person and in our libraries.
We'll look forward to that.
Thank you. I just now want to take David Fothergill before we move down the line, before we lose all the lead members.
I've got a specific question for Ros, but it's not on her report, it's on her day-to-day job. So can I just log that we don't skip over saying we've just done Ros? I do need to ask her a question.
We'll start with Heather then in children's. Any questions for Heather? No? Right, we will go to Ros then and back to David.
As Somerset's one of the most likely counties to flood, I'd just like to understand if we have a solar farm drainage strategy policy. And as we already have over 100 solar farms in the county, do we have a policy on drainage relating to solar farms? And if we don't, Doncaster City Council do. And I'm sure we could copy theirs, but it is quite important as they are coming forward rapidly, and it's important it matter, particularly for my area at the moment.
Thank you for that. I'll give you a detailed report on that, but there are a large number of solar farms, and I think drainage needs to be looked at again, not just with solar farms, but right across the county, because we've seen very different weather patterns. And I think that it's not my team, but Dixie's team who are looking at flooding and the resilience we can build in our communities. But I'll take the point about a planning policy around drainage on solar farms separately.
It is a separate planning requirement. So I understand we don't have one.
Okay. Is there any more questions for Ros other than we've gone back? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Ros, I noticed that you're basically next meeting we have, next full council meeting, the suggestions of the input into the planning changes proposed that we will have at the regional planning boards. They will have 11 or 13 planning officers, and planning members of committees. And I just wondered, I know we should probably debate it fully at the time, but just before that, I don't understand the reasoning for reducing the number of members. But just to note that would also reduce the quorate number, and strategic remains at 13 with the same, I can't remember whether it's 6 or 5 to be quorate, but quite often we get people who are ill, they can't attend, and I think it's not valuable to reduce it. I can't imagine why we'd want to.
Okay. The review of the planning committees and several other constitutional things were led by Democratic Services with the chairs and vice chairs of planning, and they came up with some amendments and changes following quite considerable consultation. if you've been to any planning committee, you will have seen questionnaires going out to members of the public, to people who are in attendance, and also planning agents, and also members. And so that information was collated. It was then considered in some detail by the chairs and planning chairs, and then a workshop was held with the Constitutional and Governance Subcommittee on the issue. And so the recommendation has come from that process. And I do recognise that there are challenges about the recommendation. There are also challenges about attendance at such meetings, and also what the numbers should be. And there are some very strongly held views, and we will have a final agreed paper to come to the meeting in May. Inevitably, not everyone would agree, because people like the planning system they're used to if you come from a district area. And we're going to have to make a fairly crunchy decision of, yes, we'll run with this for 6 months and see how it works. We can't redesign a process en masse in a full council meeting. So if you have missed the opportunity to give feedback on anything, then do send it to, I think, Scott, as you're leading on that from Democratic Services, and you will pick up any additional comments from members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, going down the line, are there any questions for Theo? No? Moving on to Fed, obviously communities. Yes, David.
I'm assuming I've now got my badge which says I'm age limit verified. So this is a question about licensing. I think that's you, isn't it, Fed? Could you just confirm for me whether the policy still exists that this council will not allow the last pub in a village to close and be redeveloped?
I don't know that answer off the top of my head, David, but I will get you the answer and circulate it to everyone.
Thank you. Right, with some trepidation, I move on to Richard. Usually this is how we go. So the Mike Rigby theory still continues. Right, starting from this end, Sue.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know whether Richard should be terrified or flattered with the amount of interest and attention he generates. But I think he'll probably draw a conclusion on that at the end of this. What I wanted to raise, Richard, and I did send a photograph to you as a heads up, is the state of a bridge that I think the parish council is consistently referred to, and it's the bridge at Cold Harbour Farm. It is probably, I'm not sure whether it's listed or not, and it goes over the Sustrans Cycleway 33, the Stopline Way, and it is recently, thanks to construction work, kept getting hit. The stone coping at the top has come away, lower stones have got dislodged, and there is very real concern that those stones could drop onto the highway, onto the cycleway, footway below. And this council did spend a lot of money putting in that Stopline Way. You spent about 100 grand per kilometre back in the early 2000s. That's not the point though. The point is though that the bridge comes under Somerset Council as a structure, but because of a highway anomaly, the public footpath ends 100 feet short of it. So the problem is we're now in a ping pong situation between the County Farms Estate and Highways as to who's actually going to properly repair this bridge. So Somerset Estate have temporarily done a repair, and to be honest, it's a botch job. It's not really suitable. You're propping a bit of it up with bricks. It doesn't line up. It hasn't taken the ashtrays away. And considering the age and the status of this bridge, this does it no justice. So who is actually in an authority that is meant to be transforming, which means no silos, but yet here we are dealing with two sideways. One is called Highways, the other is called County Estates.
Can it be resolved, please? And also, can a long-term plan be drawn up for that cycleway, which is very much the Cinderella cycleway? It has been neglected. It is falling disrepair. We are responsible for half of it. Sustrans till 2028 for the other. There is some money, S106, possibly from Persimmon, but it needs a joined up long-term plan to make it work and to turn it into a jewel in the Crown Estates. But for the moment, I want assurance that that bridge will be dealt with without delay, and the delay is done, and that the repairs are done on a permanent basis, not as a temporary botch up.
But before I start, I would say that last council meeting, I put a letter through to every member to say that I would be early and people could see me. Now, I forgot to send the letter out. I've been very busy this week, but I was here since 12 o'clock, ready for people to harangue me or whatever they wish to do with me, within reason. Yes, you did send me an email on this, and I don't remember whether I got you a response yet. I've got a feeling I haven't yet. You haven't had a response. Good. Right. Okay. This has always been a bugbear of mine, where there's a ping pong effect where people, different parts think that it's slightly different. I'll point out to you the situation we had in Somerton with some zebra crossings that weren't being sorted out, and it took a lot of effort of me sort of saying, no, this is not good enough. We've got to stop this ping pong. It wasn't Somerset Council's fault. It was other people that were stopping. But you've got to stop that sort of delay in things happening. So I will take on board what you said, and I will get back to you and try and give you a more wholesome response.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins, and I will be happy to accept a written response or even show you the site.
Right, going down the line. Next one, there I go.
Thank you, Chairman. Just firstly, just one observation, particularly around an issue that was raised to Councillor Wilkins by myself around flooding in one of the villages, and which I've had a response for and I've read. But just to make a comment, because I don't know if this is a wider thing within the department at all, but we raised flooding issues. The parish council raised flooding issues. We got a response, as he knows, from the relevant team saying we've looked at it, it's all fine, there's no issues with it. The parish council pressed on with Councillor Wilkins and he took it further, and I was pleased that today hearing back that actually, yeah, it's not all right, we'll do some works. But I'm just a bit concerned when things are raised in the first instance, that parish councils are being told, you've had a look, there's nothing wrong with it. But thankfully Councillor Wilkins chased it further, perhaps 2 or 3 times, and actually there was an issue. And I just wonder if there's an underlying problem there or not around the communication, actually works being done or not being done, investigative works. But I just want to put that aside and also thank him for kind of delivering on that particular thing and your persistence on that. But the thing I wanted to raise separately was around a small element of the bus service improvement plan. He'll know that £800,000 of that was allocated to Bridgewater for bus priority infrastructure along part of the Taunton Road and also part of the link between the Lega and East Quay. Also part of the funding was for new controlled traffic signals on various junctions around the town. Now, when we heard about that, we were absolutely delighted with that because we know what the traffic's like in Bridgie, and we were very hopeful that this would help alleviate some of the problem. However, I recently learned that Bridgewater will no longer be seeing any of that bus lane investment or the traffic signals improvement that was promised, because that particular £800,000 has been, what I would say, snatched from Bridgewater and diverted to Taunton instead. You'll understand that bus users are raising the issues with me. You know how good bus users are at raising issues with you too. But they in particular feel that Bridgewater's been hugely let down by backtracking on that investment. And they've asked me to ask him Why has he turned his back on Bridgewater on this issue?
Okay, there is an awful lot of work that's being done in Bridgewater around the whole of Bridgewater, as you well know. I believe that the bus improvements that you're on about that we're no longer doing would result in an 8-second improvement in bus times. I didn't think that the work, the disruption and the work for an 8-second improvement was frankly worthwhile. That is why we're not doing them.
Right, I have 3 more, Lucy and then Rosemary Woods and then Mandy Chilcott, then we'll move on.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order. Could you insist that people don't raise parochial issues that could have been raised outside this meeting? We're nearly at end time.
Yeah.
Fine to raise general issues about policy, but not about specific constituencies.
Point well made. Lucy.
Thank you. So my question is around road safety. About a month ago, a car overturned on a narrow winding road into Bruton. Almost impossible to imagine it could happen, 20-mile-an-hour area. Nobody was injured. We had a similar incident nearly 2 years ago, and nobody was injured then. So highways tell me there's nothing that needs to be done and nothing that can be done. In a wider sense, I want to know what your reassurances are about road safety. We've seen several terrible incidents and accidents in the whole of the county resulting in fatalities recently. Do we have road safety funds? Are they ring-fenced in light of the current financial situation? And are accident prevention schemes still a priority for this council?
Yeah, I will respond fully in writing. However, there is road safety schemes, and they are looked at in a data-driven format, if you like. And we have to be very clear that when we make alterations, that they will have the right response, if you see what I mean. It's for instance, we've got the Miners Arms scheme that's coming forward to deal with a crossing that's frankly quite dangerous. But we have to put some real data in behind what we do, how we do it, and where we think that we're going to get a proper response. If you on that, but I will give you a fuller answer.
Rosemary.
Right. First of all, I'm going to apologise for not asking the question I was going to ask, but I'm going to thank Councillor Wilkins for opening up the coast path at Blue Anchor, between Blue Anchor and Watchet, because that's what you promised as a council, that we'd have more pedestrian routes, we'd have cycling routes. We're still waiting for the cycling permission, but we thank you for opening it, and I'll email you with my other question. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving to Mandy, finally.
Thank you. Very quick policy question, really. It's really between yourself and Dixie Dart, who's not here, so I'll address it to you. Will this council looking at having a policy for tree planting and in specific highways tree planting? I've been trying to get some planted for 4 years, which we know about, but I think it'd be really helpful for our towns and parishes, perhaps where they're willing to fund them, that we can have a policy that they can follow so that we can get some more planted quickly around the county. There are bits of work that highways need to do because there needs to be a licence. There are bits that our arboriculturist needs to do because it needs to be the right type of tree. And there just needs to be a very quick and easy way of getting it done. So I think this council is keen to be green and plant trees. And I think if we could have something in place across the county, I think it would hit those tree planting, but also really encourage that work between towns, parishes and the council.
Richard, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. And you're absolutely right. Any work we can do to help facilitate tree planting in this county is obviously an important thing, especially with the flooding and the resilience that trees put into the area. I think that's a very good suggestion. I think I will work with Dixie on as a first point. I think it's probably her directorate that should lead it, but I will ask my my highways team to work strongly with her.
Thank you. It does fall across different areas, which has been the struggle. Really happy to have a conversation with you both if it helps.
Ros, finish off, please.
Could I just add to that, the highways people, and I've been dealing with this, have a very clear policy about pollarding trees, which are really quite important, particularly on the levels of moor, particularly between the road and the Reen. And that's one area where they are clearing areas before things are being planted or pollarding. And the second thing, which I've been working on quite considerably in my part of the world, is that ash dieback is so substantial, and that they're having to, I'm sorry to say, cut down dying and dead trees along roadsides before they actually fall onto the road. And so the highways team are very involved in tree works adjacent to the highway. And I expect alongside that, Dixie has got a planting process as well, but we'll take it offline.
Thank you. No policy plan in place for our area, so welcome a conversation about that as well.
Thank you. Moving on to item 11, which is the report of the 5 scrutiny committees. Sorry. I missed you out. You were hiding behind Richard. Any questions for Sarah? Well, that was a big disappointment. Moving back. Okay, moving on to item 11, right. I did promise, we're at this stage of the meeting where it's getting late. I did promise the chairs that they could have at least an input, and I will go round. I know we've got 3 here, starting with Lee Redmond.
My input, Chair, is that it's pretty unreasonable, again, that scrutiny has been delegated to the end of the meeting, and I'm looking around the room and surprise, including my own members, so don't worry, they get it just as well. There's lots of empty spaces. I'm sorry, this is beginning to get a bit monotonous now. I know scrutiny is irrelevant in most people's heads, but this is getting silly.
Yes, Martin Dimmery, did you want to add?
I'd very much like to commend the report to the members. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Filmer is here, I believe.
Yep, he still is. So just again say to present the report to members. Agree with the comments from Lee. It would be helpful if we could somehow be a little bit higher up the agenda, because we do tend to get sort of shoved down the back when everyone has left. But just take this opportunity to thank the officers who put together the meetings, reports presented to us, and also the members of my scrutiny committee and all those who've come substituted, because we've had a lot of substitutes come along. So thank you for making that effort to come to the meetings and contribute.
Thank you. We have Jill Slocum online.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I just wanted to say, can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say that the importance of the committee cannot be underestimated at the adult social care, at the committee, because the adult social care budget is obviously the highest, and it's one of the largest of the council's statutory spend. I've tried to make sure, along with the committee, the scrutiny function we perform helps to deliver efficiency savings, and working together with the Director of Social Care, we've made a critical friend in shaping a programme called My Future, My Life, My Future, but there is still an awful lot of work to do. We are an inclusive committee, and I would just welcome the views and attendance of all councillors. And can I just make the point, which is on my report, Healthy Weston, we just wanted to say that there was a presentation given to the committee in February indicating some very positive steps. I have, however, heard some very recent experiences of residents that actually it's not the case in Weston Hospital at the moment. And I've got in touch with the Executive Managing Director for an update on Healthy Weston. There seems to be some postcode lottery issues that really are very important to many residents. So we've asked them to come back to the committee. But obviously it isn't very important. And I do agree with Councillor Redmond that being at the end, everyone's nearly gone. And it does feel like we're here to make efficiency savings, and quite honestly, we're shoved at the bottom all the time. And it would be nice to have a little bit of change around, Chairman, if that would be if that's the case. But like I said, apologies, I'm not there, but you don't want Bridgie bugs.
Thank you, Joan. I hope you feel better.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, can I just take the opportunity to thank all 5 of the scrutiny chairs for the incredible hard work they do in scrutinising the work of the council. Is hugely appreciated, and I wonder whether we could request that this item be higher up on the agenda in future meetings, because we have run significantly over time. I'm aware that several members have had town and parish councils that they need to move on to. It's not a lack of interest, it's an inability to be in more than one place at the same time. So that thanks to all those members who sit on scrutiny, and particularly the chairs and vice chairs who work so hard. Could we recognise that by putting them higher up the agenda, please?
Thank you. Heather, did you want to?
Bill said it exactly perfectly right on the thank yous, but I just want to say that Jill mentioned that one of the roles of scrutiny is about efficiency savings. It's also about quality improvement, and the quality of the services to be improved. And I really welcome what the scrutiny teams do, and I just want to say thank you. So, but yeah, Bill did most of the work on that one, but thank you very much.
Thank you. And from me, oh, sorry, David.
It's not related, but I just wonder whether through the leader and his colleagues, Constitution Committee, we could just revisit whether it's right to start this meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of people do. I'm missing a parish council now. A lot of people have had to go to them because they start and they've got to go home, got to have tea or whatever. And I know 10 o'clock means that people have to take a day off work if they're working, but it does feel like 2 o'clock's not actually producing the best result for us. Just my thoughts.
The point is, sorry, Chair, through you. The point is well made, and I'm sure we can look at it. I think we would normally not have anticipated the April meeting taking this long. If you recall, the budget meeting we did start earlier in the day, and it may well just be that we had a contentious item on the agenda that needed significant debate. But yeah, we will take that on board.
Okay, thank you. Right, if we can move on to the last item, which is the annual report of the Standards Committee. Hand over to John Bailey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody who stayed here. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know I'm going to ignore the many pleas that I've had to read this through line by line. I have nothing to add, but we'll take any question.
Are there any questions? No. If that being the case, I can thank those that are still here for attending and have a safe journey home. Thank you.